Chapter 1621. The Battle Realm of the Fairy Realm. The Broken Fog Mountain. Damn it! I finally found another treasure. The big black bird rubbed his golden claws excitedly, his eyes shining. It was a small mountain surrounded by a faint golden mist. It was only 100 feet high, with jagged rocks and plants that looked like they were made of gold. It was a beautiful sight. Lin Sun and the others stood in front of an ancient rock halfway up the mountain. In the crack of the rock, there was a blade of grass that was as straight as a sword. It was a foot high, as thick as a thumb, and as clear as gold. Its stem was covered with natural cloud patterns, and on both sides of the stem, there were 9 leaves that were as thin as cicadas' wings. Looking closely, the leaves were like a golden ladder, climbing up layer by layer. On the veins of each leaf, there was a golden flame jumping. 9-leaf golden spiritual grass. Every 1,000 years, 1 leaf will grow, and every 3,000 years, it will suffer a natural disaster. Only those who survive the disaster can continue to grow. This is a natural treasure, and it contains the power of the innate gold spiritual force. With a little refining, it can become a peerless flying sword with great lethality. The big blackbird's face was full of joy. The most amazing thing is that this treasure can be used as a natural divine material, which is immeasurable for refining a natal holy weapon. This 9-leaf golden spiritual grass is already 9,000 years old, and it has gone through 3 heavenly disasters. It is the best time to pick it. Lin Sun started to work while listening. Just like the night sky jade vine, there was also a Tao pattern restrictive formation around the 9-leaf golden spiritual grass. The big black bird reminded him, "Kid, according to the original agreement, this 9-leaf golden spiritual grass should be given to me." Silver and Tian looked at him with disdain. With their master's character, how could he be greedy for something that belonged to him? This thieving bird was simply gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. It was disdainful. The big black bird ignored him directly. He had always been thick-skinned. At the same time, in a world far away from the fairy battle realm, on the peak of a majestic mountain surrounded by fairy energy, a flock of gold crows flapped their wings and flew in the sky, sprinkling down a magnificent golden light that covered the ancient buildings on the mountain in a layer of sacred golden light. Damn it, that shameless thief is obviously planning to capture all the treasures we've been nurturing in the fairy realm. At the peak of the mountain, Jiang Heng gritted her teeth, her beautiful eyes filled with anger. Her face was like beautiful jade, and her eyes were like clear springs. She wore a green dress and stood alone in the sea of clouds on the mountain peak. She was like an otherworldly fairy with peerless beauty. Even though she was angry at this moment, there was still a kind of astonishing beauty to her. In front of Jiang Heng, an 8 trigrams plate made from a tortoise shell floated in the air, forming a screen of light. Lin Sun and the others were reflected in the light screen. This was the medicine guiding star plate, which was connected to the Taoist pattern restriction formation near the 9-leaf gold spiritual grass. Through this treasure, one could observe the growth of the 9-leaf gold spiritual grass. In the beginning, Jiang Heng found the night sky jade vine being picked by Lin Sun when he was inspecting the divine medicine in the battlefield of flying immortals with this treasure. Junior sister Jiang Heng, the fairy battle realm, is related to the legendary Kunlun ruins. It's a strange, secret plane. We can only open a void tunnel to it once every 100 years. Next to her, a white-robed man appeared out of thin air and said, "We've already used it once, which means we can't do it again." The white-robed man was thin and had his hands behind his back. His hair was gray, and his eyes were sharp like divine light. His whole body emitted a majestic and boundless aura. He was obviously very young and handsome. He did not have much vicissitudes of life on him, but his aura was even more terrifying than that of a peerless saint. Eldest senior brother, in the past few days, that little thief has already stolen the Fujian cold blue flower, the phoenix plume 5-grain root, the mysterious light of earth wood, and several other innate divine treasures. Jiang Heng was still indignant as he said, In addition to that night sky jade vine and this 9-leaf gold spirit grass in front of us, almost all of the treasures that our Xuanji Dao sect has nurtured have been stolen by this little thief. Are we just going to watch? The white-robed man, who was addressed as eldest senior brother, smiled. His eyes were deep and steamed with a frightening sharpness. He said, "Compared to the pagoda on this kid, these treasures are nothing. When the opportunity in the Kunlun ruins opens, I'll definitely make him spit out 10 times or 100 times what he took." His voice was clear like the ringing of morning bells and evening drums, but it revealed incomparable confidence. Jiang Heng's eyes lit up. That's right. This little thief has the flying immortal token. He'll definitely go to the Kunlun ruins in the future. At that time, I'll settle the score with him. Right? Suddenly, Jiang Heng thought of something and said, "Eldest senior brother, what's the origin of that little thief's pagoda?" "It's actually able to block the attack of the Great Sun Thunder Wheel." The Great Sun Thunder Wheel was one of the ultimate treasures of the Xuanji Dao sect. It was born in the primordial chaos of the astral lightning world. Many years ago, in order to subdue this treasure, an emperor of the Xuanji Dao sect had personally taken action and directly refined the entire astral lightning world. Only then did he seize the opportunity to subdue this treasure and obtain it in one go. After that, because this treasure was extraordinarily powerful and contained the quintessence of the lightning Dao of a world, it naturally became one of the ultimate treasures of the Xuanji Dao sect. However, that pagoda had blocked the attack of the Great Sun Thunder Wheel and even caused eldest senior brother to personally take action. How could Jiang Heng not be curious? This pagoda has an extremely great origin. Countless years ago, it was already famous throughout the world and possessed unbelievable might. The white-robed man's eyes burned brightly as he said in a low voice, "However, I'm still not sure if it's the legendary pagoda." "You're not sure?" The white-robed man nodded while reminiscence suffused the space between his brows. "Yes, because a very long time ago, this pagoda vanished from the world during a great battle. That battle, a total of 6 emperor-level orthodoxies have been destroyed, and 19 worlds have fallen to the enemy's hands. Just the number of casualties alone is more than 30. Besides that, countless quasi-emperors, saint-kings, and great saints perished. That battle caused the entire starry sky to tremble and go silent." As he finished speaking, the space between the white-robed man's brows carried a wisp of shock. It was a period of darkness that could shock the ages. Destruction and slaughter affected countless worlds and living beings, and the heavy casualties were sufficient to be unforgettable. The Dao battle of the emperors during the primeval times? Jiang Heng seemed to have thought of something, and he couldn't help but gasp. That battle was a battle between emperor-level experts, and it was a battle between numerous colossi and primeval sects that reigned supreme in the starry sky. That battle was also called the Dao Battle of the Emperors. Eldest senior brother, you're saying that it's very likely that the pagoda appeared during the Dao Battle of the Emperors? At this moment, Jiang Heng felt shocked. The white-robed man nodded and said, "That's what I'm not sure about as well. After all, you know that after the Dao Battle of the Emperors came to an end, practically all the treasures that once shook the world were destroyed in the intense battle, and very few were able to remain intact and circulate out." Jiang Heng couldn't help but ask, "What exactly is the name of that pagoda?" The white-robed man patted Jiang Heng on the shoulder and said, "This pagoda involves a great deal, and the sect behind it was like a taboo during the primeval times. No one dared to speak rashly about it. I'll tell you when we head to the Kunlun ruins and capture that kid." Right at this moment, the tortoiseshell's 8 trigrams disc suddenly emanated a strange rumble, and then the scene that was originally revealed shattered and vanished along with it. Jiang Heng's beautiful face darkened, and he gritted his teeth and said, "The 9-leaf gold spirit herb was taken by that little bastard as well." The white-robed man fell into deep thought. Other than that pagoda, why did the creation cauldron appear as well? When the Dao Battle of the Emperors took place during the primeval times, it was clear that the core of the 9 regions, the ancient wasteland world, had already been destroyed. Could it be that there's something else going on? Looks like I must capture that kid when the Kunlun ruins opens and properly interrogate him. Back then, the ancient wasteland world was the place where most martial emperors died. In the distant sky, a green flood dragon that was over 30 meters long suddenly flew over and called out, "True disciple Ji Qian, listen up." The white-robed man's expression turned solemn as he cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Qian, the number one true disciple of the Xuanji Dao sect, an all-powerful, peerless great saint. In the 9 regions, he could establish a sect and be revered by countless people. However, at this moment, he had a respectful expression as he bowed as a disciple. The Xuanji Dao sect's deep foundation was evident from this. A few days later, the flying immortal battle realm. It's finally coming to an end. Kuan Xiaoyu, Xue Qingyi, and Zhu Yingkong walked out of the underground cave they were hiding in. They looked up at the sky and felt a sense of relief. A golden crack appeared in the sky, and a strange and obscure power of order spread out from it. Today was the 10th day since the opening of the Flying Deity Battlefield, and it was also the day that the Flying Deity Battlefield would come to an end. I wonder if the camp of the ancient wasteland realm has been destroyed. Kuan Xiaoyu murmured. There won't be any accidents. Zhu Yingkong swore. With the pawns in the camp of the ancient wasteland realm working together, no matter how sturdy the city of Dao protectors that Lin Sun had built was, it would be useless. I hope so. Xue Qingyi sighed. So what if they destroyed the camp of the 8 regions? If Lin Sun didn't die, he would become a great threat to the 8 regions in the future. It's time to leave. At the same time, Lin Sun raised his head in the broken fog mountain. His eyes were deep and bright. This trip to the Flying Deity Battlefield could be considered a complete victory for him. If there were no accidents, the structure of the 9 regions battlefield was destined to be rewritten. After all, the top forces of the 8 regions have been almost wiped out. Only Kuan Xiaoyu, Xue Qingyi, and Zhu Yingkong were left, and they were destined to not be able to cause any more trouble. The only thing Lin Sun was worried about was the safety of the camp of the ancient wasteland. Today is New Year's Eve. At 6 p.m., Goldfish found a golden red packet on the official WeChat account. 1,888 yuan in cash. Come and get it. Those who haven't added him open WeChat, search for the official account, and entered Zayajinyu 233 to add him. Chapter 16:22. In the sky, the power of the rules of order was rolling, and it was about to form a vortex passage. Lin Sun waited silently. In addition to killing enemies, he had also gained a lot from this trip to the battlefield of fairies. Now he had 8 fairies tokens with enough war merits and Taoist luck. In addition, the spoils of war obtained from killing enemies were even more amazing. All kinds of magic materials, treasures, and rare treasures were piled up like mountains, and their value was immeasurable. At least for a long time, whether it was cultivation or refining holy treasures, he didn't have to worry about the shortage of materials. In addition, his progress in cultivation was also quite amazing, especially after refining the night jade vine. 1 day of cultivation was equivalent to 100 days of cultivation, so Lin Sun's cultivation in the middle stage of True Sage was completely completed. It wouldn't be long before he could enter the late stage of True Sage. If the speed of cultivation was spread out, the whole world would be shocked. After all, the 9 regions battlefield had only been open for 2 years. In these 2 years, Lin Sun had smoothly stepped into the Saint Realm from the top of the King Realm to the top of the Saint Realm. Now, his cultivation had reached the peak of the middle stage of Saint Realm. This speed of cultivation was shocking. The most incredible thing was that Lin Sun didn't become stronger for the sake of becoming stronger. Every step he took was extremely solid, far surpassing his peers. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be almost invincible among his peers. Generally speaking, every step of the Saint Realm was extremely difficult. In the ancient Desolation Realm, people of the Saint Realm were rarely seen in the world. Why? It was very simple, because they were cultivating in seclusion. For these true sages, there are almost countless examples of people cultivating in seclusion for thousands of years in order to break through. Lin Sun's ability to become a saint in just 2 years and make breakthroughs in the saint realm had a lot to do with his trip to the Nine Regions battlefield. Only in the Nine Regions battlefield could there be enough opportunities for a top saint to transform quickly. If Lin Sun hadn't chosen to enter the Nine Regions battlefield but stayed in the ancient Desolation realm, he probably wouldn't have been able to become a saint so quickly. Master, the secret realm of fairies is coming to an end. In this third battle of the Nine Regions, you should be able to bear the title of number 1 of the Nine Regions. Little Silver suddenly spoke up excitedly. I heard that in the previous 2 Nine Regions battles, the 2 fellows who became the number 1 in the Nine Regions became martial emperors in the following years. With your current strength, it won't be difficult for you to become an emperor in the future. Little Tianzi nodded in agreement. This time, in the Fairy Battle Realms competition, his master was unrivaled, and he was undeniably the strongest. The big black bird didn't seem to be convinced. It sneered and said, "Don't forget, I saved your master from a peerless great saint. I am the real number 1 in the Nine Regions." Little Silver immediately shouted, "Thief bird, do you dare to fight with my master to see who's better?" Lil Tion's expression became unfriendly. The big black bird rolled its eyes and glanced at Lin Sun, asking tentatively, "Boy, do you want to play?" Lin Sun smiled brightly and agreed happily. "Okay." The big black bird laughed dryly and said, forget it. The fairy battle realm is coming to an end. What's the point of fighting? I will take a step back and let's share the first place in the Nine Regions." "Share the first place? That's too bad. It's better to compete with each other." As Lin Sun spoke, he took a step forward. But the big black bird, like a bird startled by the twang of a bowstring, dodged far away. Little Silver and Lil Tion couldn't help but sneer. It was obvious that the bird had a guilty conscience. Lin Sun stopped and didn't make a move. But the big black bird felt its cheeks burning, and it didn't mention the first place in the Nine Regions anymore. Buzz! Soon, a huge vortex tunnel appeared in the sky. "Let's go." Without hesitation, Lin Sun took Little Silver, Lil Tion, and the big black bird and flew away. Ancient wilderness world city of Tao Protectors. The battle had ended for several days. The battlefield full of blood and bones outside the city had been cleaned up. Now it was clean and tidy, without a speck of dust. Cheers and laughter could be heard in the city. Every expert of the ancient Desolation realm looked relaxed and confident from the bottom of their hearts. The allied forces of the 8 regions had gone all out, but in the end, they returned in failure, leaving a ground full of corpses and blood. It could be said that they had suffered heavy casualties. According to the statistics, there were more than 100 sages who had been killed. This was a heavy blow to the allied forces of the 8 regions. For a long time to come, it was destined that they would not be able to organize a force of a similar scale to attack again. The price that the ancient wilderness paid was the destruction of the formation of the 4 great 8 regions. Miraculously, there were no casualties. That Lady Shia's solstice is too powerful. She seems to be invincible. I suspect that even Senior Lin Sun is no match for her. What are you talking about? No matter how powerful Lady Shia's solstice is, she is Senior Lin's confidant. That's what I admire most about him. By the way, today is the end of the Battle of Flying Immortals. I wonder if Senior Lin can come back safely. Bah, don't jinx it. In the city, similar discussions could be heard continuously. Who do you think Big Brother will greet first when he comes back? At the same time, Old Toad and Alu were hiding stealthily in the dark. Looking at the 2 figures standing on the city wall in the distance, they both had a strange feeling. The atmosphere was too subtle. On the city wall, Shia's solstice stood alone. Her slender figure was shrouded in the darkness of the eternal night, like a statue. Since the end of the battle a few days ago, she had been standing there quietly, without saying a word. And Zhao Jingxian was also waiting there for some reason. Shia's solstice stood there, and so did she. She had no intention of leaving. Definitely, Alu was about to say something, but he suddenly realized that although the question seemed to be a simple greeting, it was actually not simple at all. No matter who he greeted first, it seemed that it would make the other person unhappy. Alu muttered, "We brothers can't help with this kind of thing. Big brother can only pray for himself." Look, Miss Jingxian is beautiful on the outside and intelligent on the inside. Her features are picturesque, and she's as elegant as a fairy. She's truly one of the most beautiful women in the world. What's rare is that she and Big Brother love each other, like a match made in heaven. Old Toad sighed ruefully. But at the same time, Miss Shia's solstice isn't bad at all. She's been living with Big Brother since a long time ago, and their relationship is extremely close. Furthermore, Alu, you've also seen Miss Shia Solstice's beauty. She's absolutely a peerless beauty that can bring calamity to a country. So beautiful that even the world pales in comparison. Big Brother dotes on her to the bone. Either one of these two girls is enough to make countless heroes bow down to them, but they just happen to be inextricably linked to Big Brother. Speaking up to this point, Old Toad looked conflicted and let out a long sigh. It's not easy to choose. It's really not easy to choose. Alu also sighed ruefully. Damn it, even we feel conflicted just looking at them, let alone Big Brother. He's definitely in even more pain. Old Toad chuckled. It's not that easy to enjoy the blessings of having two partners, especially Miss Jingxian and Miss Shia Solstice. Each one of them is a top-notch beauty in the world. How could they lower themselves to serve one man with others? The two of them conversed in a low murmur. On top of the city walls, the atmosphere was rather subtle. Shia Solstice stood there, the light of the eternal night shrouding her body. No one could see her face, making her appear mysterious and awe-inspiring. But as long as she stood there, she would always be the center of attention. Zhao Jingxian was dressed in a light purple dress. Her black hair fell over her shoulders, and her face was unadorned. Her features were as elegant as a painting, her body was slender and graceful, and her skin was as fair as jade. Just by standing there casually, she exuded an air of nobility. This had something to do with the environment she had grown up in, and it was also inextricably linked to the true dragon blood flowing through her veins. The two of them had already stood there for several days. Anyone could discern that there was something off about the atmosphere between the two of them, so no matter if it was Xiaohao, Ruowu, or laughing at the heavens and the others, all of them had chosen to retreat at the first possible moment. It was to the extent that only the two of them had been standing on the enormous city walls for the past few days. I just hope Lin Sun returns soon. Otherwise, I'm really worried that a conflict will arise between the two of them. Xiaohao sighed with emotion. He was drinking with laughing at the heavens, Chun, and the others. Yichen smiled. Now that I think about it, Lin Sun has already become a saint, so it's time for him to choose a Tao companion. I just don't know who he likes the most. Laughing at the heavens said, if it was me, I would just keep anyone I like by my side. It wouldn't be so troublesome. Yichen instantly ridiculed. Why did I hear that you were bullied by a girl when you were young, and she forced you to run all over the place while naked? You were just sure crying for your parents. It was also from that time that you started clamoring about never touching a woman in your entire lifetime? Laughing at the heavens' face stiffened, and then he flared up with rage. I heard that a group of female cousins would hug and kiss you every single day when you were young, and that isn't all. Don't you feel ashamed that you've been fond of rouge since you were young? Yichen's face instantly darkened as well, and he gnashed his teeth. That's because I wasn't sensible when I was young. Laughing at the heavens gave tit for tat and refused to give in at all. So what if I ran all over the place while naked when I was young? Xiaohao sat at the side. He wanted to laugh, yet didn't dare to, and it was to the point his face twitched. These two fellows were simply born to be enemies, and they would fight each other as soon as they met. Neither was willing to admit defeat to the other, and it was simply too extreme. We're back. Suddenly, Ruo Wu's delighted and pleasantly surprised voice resounded from outside the hall. At this moment, all the cultivators in the city of Dao protectors noticed that an enormous vortex had suddenly appeared extremely far away in the sky. After that, a dazzling ray of light flashed out from within it, and then it swiftly transformed into a tall and slender figure in a moon-white robe that fluttered with the wind. He seemed otherworldly and otherworldly like a banished immortal. Surprisingly, it was Lin Sun. Xia Ji and Zhao Jingxian, who'd been waiting on the city wall, had practically simultaneously shot their gazes over. I misspelled a letter in the previous chapter, and it should be Zaya Jinyu 233. Everyone, just open WeChat and search for the official account. Grab red packets at 6 p.m. tonight. Chapter 1623. Lin Sun was back. At this moment, the clamorous and bustling noise in the entire city of Dao protectors had vanished, and it was deathly silent. Countless eyes looked at the distant sky, where Lin Sun stood alone like a banished immortal. This young man had wreaked havoc in the blood demon realm and besieged an entire city by himself. He had rebuilt the city of Dao protectors and wiped out the coalition army of the 7 territories by himself. He had also defeated hundreds of peerless sages by the Black Cliff Sea and defeated 3 peerless figures, including Xueqingyi, to create an opportunity for a group of peerless figures in the ancient Desolation realm to enter the Yuan magnetic secret realm. Over the past 2 years, his deeds had spread throughout the 9 territories battlefield. He was like the sun in the sky, shining like a legend. Now, he had returned from the fairy battlefield alive. It's good that he's back. At this moment, Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, and the other peerless sages were completely relieved. They felt extremely relaxed. At first, they were all worried that Lin Sun would be suppressed by the peerless figures from the 8 territories when he went to the fairy battlefield. He might even be killed. But fortunately, he was back, safe and sound. However, when Xiaohao and the others were about to go to greet him, they all stopped and their expressions changed. Because it was not their turn to fight yet. Lin Sun felt a sense of relief when he returned and saw that the city of Dao Protector was completely intact. The city of Dao Protectors was still there after 10 days, which meant that the ancient Desolation realm was safe and sound. This was undoubtedly the best news. But soon, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed and his pupils widened little by little. He stared at the beautiful figure on the top of the city of Dao Protectors, almost unable to believe his eyes. Xia? Lin Sun's heart trembled. Before the arrival of the peerless realm, Xia Ji floated away from the Star Chest Sea and went to a dark portal like the eternal night. Then she disappeared. Since then, Lin Sun had experienced 10 years of fighting in the peerless realm. Then he returned to the mortal world and traveled all over the territory of the Empire. Later, he went to the bloodthirsty battlefield and the mulberry forest. After returning to the ancient Desolation realm, he started his journey to the 9 territories battlefield. Until now, more than 10 years had passed. For more than 10 years, how could Lin not worry about Xia Ji, who had been missing for a long time? However, he did not expect to see the most familiar figure in his memory appear on the tall city wall that he had built with his own hands as soon as he returned from the fairy battlefield. This was undoubtedly a huge surprise, and it was even more delightful than a great victory. In this world, there was nothing more delightful than a reunion after a long separation. However, when Lin Sun was about a step closer, he suddenly found that the atmosphere seemed to be a little strange apart from summer solstice and Zhao Jingxian. There was no one else on the city wall. That didn't seem right. Given Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao, and Ruo Wu's perceptive abilities, they should have sensed him right away when he returned this time. Why hadn't he appeared yet? Big brother, Miss Xia Ji and Miss Jingxian are waiting for you. Take it easy. Suddenly, Old Toad's voice rang in Lin Sun's ears. Lin Sun couldn't help but inwardly gasp and feel his scalp tingle. Only then did he realize what was wrong with the situation. Back then, Xia Ji had said that if he wanted to marry a wife, he had to get through her first. Has there been a conflict between Xia Ji and Jingxian? Even though Lin Sun was now at the peak of the Saint realm, his heart was as firm as a rock, and he was used to great winds and waves, he still couldn't help but feel a headache at this time. But he didn't show any abnormality on his face. He smiled and walked towards the top of the city wall. At this moment, Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao, laughing at the heavens, Yechen and others who were hiding in the dark all widened their eyes and felt worried for Lin Sun. Lin Sun, you're back. To everyone's surprise, Zhao Jingxian took the initiative to speak first. Her smile was bright and beautiful, and her red lips and white teeth were shining brilliantly. Her eyebrows were full of undisguised joy. Before Lin Sun could speak, Zhao Jingxian looked at Xia Ji and said naturally, "Look, Xia Ji is also here. I believe you must be very surprised and pleasantly surprised." Lin Sun nodded subconsciously and then immediately cursed in his heart. However, after careful observation, he didn't find any trace of displeasure on Zhao Jingshuan's face, so he calmed down a little. At this time, Zhao Jingxian said with a smile, "Now that I see you back, I'm completely relieved. You guys talk. I haven't seen you for many years. I believe you must have a lot to talk about. I'll go back and have a rest first. In the evening, I'll call my friends to hold a dinner for you." As she said, she cast an encouraging look at Lin Sun and then turned around and left. From beginning to end, he hadn't been sloppy at all. After he was done speaking beautifully, he turned around and left in a carefree and unrestrained manner. Old Toad, Alu and the others in the dark couldn't help but be amazed by his demeanor and bearing and couldn't help but feel admiration for him. Miss Jingxian's means were amazing. She didn't make a scene, nor did she fight tit for tat. Instead, she took the initiative to take a step back, which helped Lin Sun avoid a dilemma and preserved his dignity. She had a perfect sense of propriety, which was very beautiful. Even Ruo Wu, who was a woman, could not help but sigh in admiration. This lady Zhao really has a beautiful and exquisite heart. A delicate situation that would have given any man a headache was resolved by her with just a few words. It was just like the spring breeze and rain, moistening everything silently. Lin Sun couldn't wait to give Zhao Jingxian a big hug in his heart. Such a private thing was watched by so many people. Once some disputes were found, it would be easy to make a joke. "You seem to be very happy." Xia Ji suddenly opened her mouth. Her voice was clear, clean, and sounded like the tinkling of nature. Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help laughing. "How can I not be happy to see you?" As he spoke, he had already come to the top of the city wall. At a glance, he could see that Xia Ji was no longer the young girl he had not seen for more than 10 years. She was slender and her waist was like a willow. Standing there, she had an outstanding bearing and was almost as tall as Lin Sun. "But I'm a little unhappy." Xia Ji's voice was calm. She turned around and stared at Lin Sun with a pair of eyes as clean and bright as stars. She said seriously, "In addition to her, how many other women have you found over the years?" Lin Sun almost broke out in a cold sweat. He coughed and said, "Xia Ji, it's not easy for us to meet again. Can we not talk about this now?" Xia Ji nodded and said, "Yes, I never refuse your request. You once promised me that when you want to marry a wife, you must get my consent first." Lin Sun said, "Of course I remember this." Speaking of this, he couldn't help but feel helpless. He subconsciously raised his hand and wanted to rub Xia Ji's head, which was a habit he had developed many years ago. But at this moment, he hesitated and his hand stopped in the air. Xia Ji reached out and picked up his hand. She naturally put it on her head and said, "It's not that I don't agree to marry a wife for you. I don't care how many you want to marry, but I'm worried that you will gradually become a burden." There was a rare trace of depression in her clear voice. This made Lin Sun feel an inexplicable pain in his heart. He held Xia Ji in his arms and took a deep breath. "No, it won't happen." Xia Ji's body was slightly stiff and then became soft and warm. She put her head close to Lin Sun's shoulder and murmured, "Since I woke up, my world was dark until I met you. Lin Sun, you can't leave me." Lin Sun hugged her more tightly. When he was in Feiyun village, Xia Ji had murmured this sentence in her sleep. But he didn't realize until today that he had always been the irreplaceable one in Xia Ji's heart. That night, a feast was held in the hall where Lin Sun lived. Like an impeccable hostess, Zhao Jingxian arranged every detail of the feast in an orderly manner. The place was filled with distinguished guests, and they toasted each other while laughing and chatting happily, and it drew out a beautiful scene under the night sky. It was also on this night that everything that had happened in the fairy battle realm was told by the big blackbird, which caused many people to cheer loudly. One should enjoy life to the fullest. Don't let the wine cup be empty to the moon. In the Battle of Fairies, Lin Sun killed all the top figures of the 8 regions and returned with a great victory, becoming the real number 1 in the Battle of the 9 regions. In front of the city of Tao protectors, the army of the 8 regions was defeated and returned in low spirits. The camp of the ancient desolation was safe from danger. The 2 battles had invisibly changed the pattern of the Battle of the 9 regions. The 8 regions, which had lost all their top forces and suffered heavy casualties, could no longer threaten the camp of the ancient desolation from now on. At the end of the feast, Lin Sun made a decision. From tomorrow on, the camp of the ancient desolation would take the initiative to attack and would not stop until the 8 regions were destroyed. The night was as dark as ink. After the guests left, only Lin Sun, Xie Ji, and Zhao Jingxian were left in the huge hall. Old Toad and Alu tactfully left with Little Silver and Little Tion. The big blackbird didn't want to leave, saying that it wanted to discuss with Lin Sun about dividing the spoils. But it was directly taken away by Old Toad. No matter how loudly it shouted, it didn't work. This bird is too greedy. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. At this time, Xie Ji had eaten and drunk enough and fell asleep quietly as usual. Of course, she naturally occupied Lin Sun's bed, just like many years ago. Jingxian, you're not angry today, are you? Lin Sun looked at Zhao Jingxian. The 2 sat side by side on the steps in front of the eaves. The lamp swayed, sprinkling mottled light and shadow. Zhao Jingxian gently nestled her head on Lin Sun's shoulder and looked at the night sky in the distance. She said softly, "Don't worry. How can I be angry with Xie Ji? She may be very powerful, but I feel that she has always been incompatible with this world and has a kind of unspeakable loneliness. I'm very happy that you are the only person she cares about. At least, she won't be lonely anymore." In the distance, there was a burst of bustling noise. The practitioners in the city were still gathering and celebrating. In the room, Xie Ji slept soundly. Beside him was a beautiful woman who was as gentle as water. Sitting quietly, listening, watching and feeling, a silent smile gradually appeared on Lin Sun's lips. He hadn't been so happy for a long time. The calm and steady feeling of joy filled his heart like a full, warm current. Lin Sun would never forget this moment for the rest of his life. Chapter 1624. The crescent moon shone over the 9 provinces. Some were happy while others were sad. While the camp of the ancient desolation was celebrating Lin Sun's victory, the camp of the 8 regions was gloomy. A few days ago, the defeat of the allied forces of the 8 regions was still vivid in their minds. A few days later, the bloody news of the Battle of the Fairies came back. For a moment, the camp of the 8 regions was restless. Everyone was terrified. Even when the 8 regions joined forces and went all out, they couldn't shake the city of Tao protector of the ancient desolation. Now, even the leaders of the 8 regions were killed by Lin Sun alone. In the end, only Kuan Xiaoyu, Zhu Inkong, and Xue Qingyu were lucky enough to survive. This was like a bolt from the blue. That Lin Sun, how could he be so powerful? Countless people were shocked. Lin Sun was simply an invincible demon. His hands were stained with blood, and he was so powerful that it almost made people despair. No, Qi Wushu, the prince of my clan, is so powerful. How could he die in the Battle of the Fairies? Some people couldn't accept the bad news and roared angrily. Qi Wushu, Lai Qian, Shi Pohe, Hua Hongxiao, Jian Qingchen. Each of them was a leader of a region. They were unparalleled and looked down on their peers. They were like suns, shining brightly and shining alone. But now, these peerless figures, who should have continued to shine in the future, had all died in Lin Sun's hands. This was undoubtedly too terrifying. It was enough to make anyone tremble in fear. It's over. The allied forces of the 8 regions attacked with all their strength, but they returned in failure with heavy casualties. Now, Even the battle in the Battle of the Fairies has ended with a crushing defeat. Is the pattern of the Battle of the Nine Regions really going to change? Many people's faces were deathly pale, and they were in a daze. In the previous two battles of the Nine Regions, countless sages from the 8 regions had crushed the camp of the ancient desolation easily. How glorious was that? But now, was that glory going to be gone? Damn it, it's all that Lin Sun's fault. That damn bastard. If it weren't for him, how could those 2-legged sheep in the ancient desolation have today's strength? There were even more people who wanted to go crazy with hatred. When the realm of ancient desolation had first opened, they hadn't taken the realm of ancient desolation seriously at all. They had regarded the realm of ancient desolation as a 2-legged sheep that they could trample, humiliate, and slaughter at will. As a matter of fact, the ancient desolation realm's camp was really weak at the beginning. They could only run around and hide. It was extremely difficult for them to survive. And all these changes started from Lin Sun. At first, he had been trapped in the blood demon world, but he had single-handedly slaughtered his way through the blood demon world, causing turmoil in the blood demon world. Everyone in the 8 regions remembered his name. Later on, he rebuilt the city of Dao protectors and annihilated the allied forces of the 7 regions. Only then did the 8 regions start to pay attention to him and raise their guard. Because of this, Xue Qingyi joined forces with a group of top sages to set up an inescapable net on the shore of the Black Cliff Sea to kill Lin Sun. But in the end, Xue Qingyi and the others suffered a crushing defeat. The situation of the 9-region battlefield had also changed since then. Among the top figures of the ancient desolation realm who returned from the Yuan magnetic secret land, a group of real top sages appeared, which turned the situation of the ancient desolation realm around. It was also at this time that the 8 regions became truly vigilant. They all regarded Lin Sun as their number 1 enemy, and almost gathered all their forces to kill him. Unfortunately, they had failed again. The Battle of the Fairy Realm had failed, and the all-out attack of the allied forces of the 8 regions had also failed. At this point, Lin Sun had single-handedly thrown the 9-region battlefield into chaos and changed the situation of the 9 regions. And because of this, the 8 regions had also fallen into turmoil. Defeated in the hands of an unknown woman. In the absolute Yin realm, Zhu Inkong sat dejectedly on a chair, his eyes lost. When he heard the news of the allied forces of the 8 regions paying a visit, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Originally, he, Kuan Xiaoyu, and Xue Qingyi had placed their hopes on him, thinking that as long as they could destroy the city of Dao protectors of the ancient desolation realm, the allied forces of the 8 regions would still be invincible. Who would have thought that the allied forces of the 8 regions would also be defeated? Zhu Inkong clenched his fists. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his breathing was heavy. He looked like he was about to go berserk. Brother, Zhu Ingxue walked into the hall. Scram. All of you scram. Zhu Inkong roared. In the past, she was the one he doted on the most, but now his eyes were like those of a ferocious beast, scaring Zhu Ingxue so much that she almost crawled out of the hall. It's over. It's really over this time. If I had known this would happen, I would have listened to Xue Qingyi and killed that little bastard at the beginning of his rise. Unfortunately, it's too late. Zhu Inkong's body trembled with anger. Gather all the forces in the city. Without my order, no one is allowed to take a step out of the city. In the northern underworld realm, Kuan Xiaoyu's face was ashen and cold to the extreme. He had also learned of the grievous news, and his heart was bleeding. Right now, he could only gather all the forces he had and prepare for the worst. Fortunately, we have the city of Dao protectors. This city was built with the blood, sweat, and tears of countless sages. I hope it can protect the northern underworld realm from destruction. Kuan Xiaoyu murmured in his heart with a wooden expression. He had a premonition that darkness would descend for a period of time. Blood demon world. Xue Qingyi was drinking wine with a calm demeanor. He was neither happy nor sad, and no one could tell what he was thinking. However, the atmosphere in the hall was so oppressive that it was suffocating. The big shots standing in the hall were all anxious and fearful. After a long time, Xuechinyi put down his wine cup and sighed softly. People don't recognize the cloud-soaring tree, and only when the clouds are high will the Tao be high. It's too late. It's all too late. His voice was bleak and lonely. Young master, someone wanted to say something, but Xuechinyi waved his hand and interrupted him. Listen to me. Run as far as you can now. Perhaps, when the 9 regions battlefield comes to an end, you might have a chance to return to the blood demon ancient realm alive. Young master, the 8 regions are not powerless to fight again. Someone gritted his teeth and was unwilling to give up. Xuechinyi was not annoyed. He picked up his wine cup and carefully sipped it. After a while, he said, when a nest is destroyed, everyone is in danger. They can't be relied on. At the end of his words, his voice was low, and there was a vague hatred that was suppressed to the extreme. Even so, we still have the city of Tao protectors. Someone else said, no one was willing to give up and flee like stray dogs. Ha! Xuechinyi revealed a mocking smile. No matter how strong this city is, can it compare to the city of Tao protectors of the ancient wasteland world that withstood the all-out attack of the 8 regions coalition army? Don't underestimate Lin Sun anymore. Those who underestimate him in the 9 regions battlefield are either dead, or like me, can only feel sorry for themselves. After a pause, he stood up and swept his gaze across the crowd. He waved his hand and said, if you want to stay, then stay. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out of the grand hall. His silhouette was bleak and had an indescribable sense of loneliness. Young master, where are you going? Someone cried out. Where else can I go? Run. Ha ha. Xuechinyi's figure disappeared outside the hall without looking back. His laughter was filled with indescribable mockery. No one knew whether he was laughing at himself or at others. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The next morning, the vast universe arc floated in the sky above the city of Tao protectors in the ancient wasteland world. Lin Sun, Xia, Ji, Xiaohao, Old Toad, Alu, laughing at the heavens, and other peerless sages gathered together. Countless experts of the ancient wastelands stood in the distance, watching from afar. They were here to send off the army. The atmosphere was solemn, and everyone's face was full of expectation. It had been 2 years. The ancient wasteland, which had been suppressed and invaded for a long time, was finally going to launch a counterattack and attack the 8 regions coalition. It was like a miracle. In the past years, it was almost impossible in the previous 2 battles of the 9 regions. But today, the impossible had finally happened. The shame of the sages would be washed away today. Xiaohao and the others were excited, and their blood was boiling. It had not been easy. The blood and hatred of countless ancestors finally had a chance to be repaid with blood. It was time to wash away the shame that the ancient wasteland had suffered in the past. Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning as he glanced at the crowd and gently spat out 2 words. Let's go, let's go. We will eat the flesh of our enemies and drink the blood of the 8 regions. Boom! The vast universe arc let out a roar. Under the gaze of countless people, it carried Lin Sun and the others through the clouds. Victory! Someone roared, and his voice shook the sky. Victory! Victory! In the huge city of Tao protectors, men and women, regardless of their cultivation, they all shouted at this moment with excitement and longing. The world was filled with thunderous shouts. Zhao Jingxian stood on the city wall and looked at the vast universe arc that was gradually disappearing in the horizon. She murmured in her heart, there are many heroes in the ancient wasteland. Since ancient times, why should we be afraid of war? The blood of a man should be brave and heroic. His heart should be like iron. Let's try to mend the sky and crack it. Absolute Een territory. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the vast universe arc rushed into the territory controlled by the ancient Een territory unimpeded. On the treasured ship, Lin Sun closed his eyes and rested. He was as quiet as a stone statue. Xia Ji sat on one side, and the table was filled with all kinds of delicious food. She was eating one bite at a time, with a tranquil look on her face. The speed of the vast universe arc was extremely fast. It moved forward in a straight line, and it actually didn't encounter any obstructions along the way. It wasn't long before a city appeared on the horizon in the distance. The city was huge and majestic, and it was completely suffused with the color of blood. It seemed extremely dazzling. This was the ancient Een Territory's city of Tao protectors. It was grand in scale, and its walls were tall and wide. Every single brick was poured with dark red blood and paved with ghastly white bones. It was the blood and bones of countless ancestors in the ancient Desolation Territory. At this moment, Zhu Yingkong's expression was livid as he stood on the towering city of Tao protectors. His eyes were wide open in disbelief. He hadn't expected that Lin Sun would really come. Moreover, Lin Sun's first target was the ancient Een Territory. "Young master, that demon Lin is here." The expressions of many nearby changed drastically, and they felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles. "Why are you panicking? We'll be invincible as long as we defend this city." Zhu Yingkong took a deep breath, and a wisp of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Give the order to activate the city barrier formation. Goldfish will be visiting her relatives tomorrow. I've already used up all the drafts. Please forgive me if the updates in the next few days aren't stable." Chapter 1625. Buzz. Following Zhu Yingkong's order, the enormous city of Tao protectors seemed to have come to life as a rain of Tao runes soared into the sky. The clouds exploded and all directions trembled. A boundlessly terrifying Saint Tao restriction energy spread out from the city of Tao protectors. 36 divine moons soared into the sky and hung high in the sky. Each divine moon was perfect and transparent, black and white intertwined, yin and yang complementing each other. This part of the world was filled with a wondrous aura of eternal night and day alternating with each other. Countless experts from the ancient Een Territory heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. This formation was called the Yin-Yang Divine Baleful Moon Formation. It had experienced 2 battles between the 9 regions, and it had enveloped the surroundings of the city of Tao protectors. It had stood towering for countless years until now. Moreover, it had been enhanced by a few tens of Tao-marking grandmasters from the Serpent Dragon clan, and that was why it possessed its current might. Its strength and terror had long been engraved into the hearts of every expert in the ancient region of Extreme Een. At this moment, Zhu Yingkong's expression also relaxed a lot. As the leader of the ancient Een Extreme region and a descendant of the Illumination Dragon bloodline, he was well aware of the power of the restrictive formation in the city. It was not an exaggeration to say that as long as one hid in the city, even if a group of peerless sages attacked with all their might, they would not be able to shake the city at all. In the distance, the vast universe arc stopped in the void. Lin Sun and the others emerged from it, and they immediately saw this scene. Looks like they already knew that we would launch a counterattack, so they gathered all their forces in the city. Xiaohao's eyes were deep as he spoke in a low voice. This time, they were all peaked saints, and there were only about 30 of them. It seemed like they were few in number, but in the 9 regions battlefield, they were all tyrannical figures. Especially Lin Sun and Xia Ji. They were almost invincible. If that's the case, we can destroy this city and kill them all. Old Toad's killing intent sword. The most important thing now is to break the formation. Ruo Wu and the others all looked at Lin Sun, who was the leader. Leave the matter of breaking the formation to me. Everyone, please be patient. Lin Sun said casually. He was observing the great city barrier formation that enveloped the sky above the city and making deductions. Lin Sun, do you really think you can ignore everyone just because you have won a few rounds? On top of the city wall, candles lit up the sky. The sound was like thunder coming from afar. His expression was cold and frightening. I'm not afraid to tell you that this formation was set up by the predecessors of the Illumination Dragon lineage. You guys are destined to be unable to shake this formation at all. Until now, Zhu Yingkong still couldn't figure out why Lin Sun would go to the ancient Een Territories camp first. Did Lin Sun think that Zhu Yingkong was a pushover? Speaking of which, I still have to thank Brother Zhu. If it wasn't for you setting up the 1,000 Ghost Great Formation in the fairy battlefield, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to wipe out those fellows in one go. Lin Sun said absent-mindedly. He was trying to deduce the mysteries of this formation. Thank me? Zhu Yingkong was so enraged that he started laughing. His face turned ashen. Fine, I'll take your head as a token of my gratitude. How about it? It's not good to force someone against their will. Lin Sun said. However, I can spare your life this time. On the one hand, I want to express my gratitude, and on the other hand, I want to know something from you. Zhu Yingkong was startled. She suppressed the resentment and hatred in her heart and asked, What is it? Have you heard of Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi? Lin Sun asked. Zhu Yingkong's eyes narrowed. He seemed to have realized something and suddenly said, Did you kill that man named Yun Qingbai? Lin Sun didn't deny it. At this time, Zhu Yingkong completely understood and said, No wonder. If Yun Qingbai didn't die, your ancient desolation realm would have been destroyed long ago. How could there be so many twists and turns? Xiao Hao, Ruo Wu, and the others couldn't help but be surprised and confused. Since when did the people of the ancient Yin realm know Yun Qingbai's name? Yun Qingbai was a chess piece manipulated by others. His fate was beyond his control. The person who controlled him was a quasi-emperor called Ba Qi from the ancient Yin realm. Lin Sun explained to them. Only then did everyone understand. Thinking that Yun Qingbai was such a tragic figure, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Back in the day, the most dazzling figure in the entire ancient desolation realm was Yun Qingbai. His swordsmanship was unparalleled, and he was so brilliant that he led the world. Even as an opponent, they had to admit that Yun Qingbai was powerful and outstanding. Who would have thought that his life was so tragic? And the culprit of all this was from the ancient Yin realm. It seems that not only do you know Ba Qi, but you also seem to know what he did in the ancient desolation realm. That's easy. After saying this, Lin Sun didn't say anything more. He began to deduce with all his heart and soul. A Saint Path forbidden formation that covered the entire city naturally couldn't be broken so easily. However, Lin Sun didn't intend to break the formation. As long as he could rush into the formation, avoid the killing tribulation, and finally step into the city, it would be enough. But to his surprise, after half an hour, he still couldn't deduce a safe path. Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. Lin Sun, don't you know where to start? Haha, I'm afraid you're going to go back in disgrace this time. On the distant city wall, Zhu Yingkong laughed without fear. Beside him, the big shots of the ancient Yin realm, who were originally nervous, all let out a long sigh of relief and showed a relaxed expression. This kid, surnamed Lin, didn't seem to be as terrible as the rumors said. Get out of here. Don't make a fool of yourself. Someone even cried out. Old Toad and Alu couldn't help but look gloomy. These outland bastards were so arrogant when they got what they wanted. Don't worry, everyone. We will break the city today. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. However, when he was about to continue to deduce, Xia Ji suddenly said, The formation is in front of us. Why bother? I'm underestimated by this girl again. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. From the beginning to the present, as long as he was accompanied by Xia Ji, it seemed that he could never avoid being underestimated by her. Of course, this wasn't intentional. It was purely Xia Ji's nature. Let me do it. Xia Ji was obviously a little impatient. She suddenly stepped into the air, and her slender figure was bathed in the light of the eternal night, like a god coming from the darkness. Be careful. Lin Sun's heart tightened. When he was about to dissuade her, Old Toad spoke first. Elder brother, a few days ago, she easily broke the 9-level Saint Path forbidden formation alone. Why not let her have a try? The others nodded. Lin Sun was stunned. He never expected that Xia Ji's image in everyone's mind had reached such a high level. Suddenly, a curtain of night emerged in the clear sky, spreading like ink and covering the city of Tao in the distance. Xia Ji strode through the sky with a pace that was neither fast nor slow, and she moved forward in a straight line. A bone spear had suddenly appeared in her right hand, and it was coiled with chilly starlight. The eternal night and the starlight set off Xia Zhi's mysteriousness. There was a kind of cold and deep aura that made people's hearts palpitate. Is it that mysterious woman? Zhu Inkong's eyes narrowed, and his heart was filled with an indescribable chill. It's her, it's her. The faces of the other big shots nearby had already changed, and many of them turned pale. A few days ago, when the allied forces of the 8 regions attacked the ancient desolation, they also participated in the battle and witnessed the horror of Xia Zhi with their own eyes. No wonder her aura is so strange and frightening. Zhu Inkong took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry. With the Yin in Yang Earth Fiend formation, she is bound to break her head and bleed." Suddenly, Xia Zhi flashed in the distance, and she charged over explosively like a wisp of dark lightning. She was unbelievably swift. At the same time, she suddenly raised the white bone spear in her hand. It was like a god had raised a divine weapon that could destroy the heavens and the earth. The eternal night in the heavens and the earth rumbled deafeningly as it surged into the white bone spear. After that, a fierce slash. Everyone felt the scene before their eyes change abruptly. The heavens and the earth were completely covered in darkness. It was like the eternal night had enveloped the world, and it revealed a strange feeling of deathly silence. It was boundlessly vast and empty. In this boundless darkness, an illusory figure silently appeared in the darkness. His figure was mighty and boundless, like a divine king in the eternal night. The city of Tao protectors before him only reached his knees, and it seemed extremely short. Bang! The figure in the darkness suddenly smashed his fist forward. In the sky above the city of Tao protectors, the 36 divine moons suddenly glowed, and they emanated blazing and gorgeous divine radiance as they resisted the attack. Rumbling that shook the heavens, and the earth resounded, and the earth quaked. Dazzling light swept through the darkness and emanated terrifying fluctuations that seemed capable of destroying the world. At this instant, the bodies of Zhu Inkong and the other experts from the ancient Yin territory trembled, and they felt the city of Tao protectors shake violently. After that, the darkness shattered and dispersed, and everyone's field of vision returned to normal. When they looked at the city of Tao protectors in the distance, besides shaking a little, it wasn't damaged at all. Even the grand formation that enveloped the city remained intact. Only the 36 divine moons grew even more dazzling, and they revolved in a profound trajectory in the sky. What a powerful grand formation! The expressions of Xiaohao, Old Toad, and the others changed slightly. How terrifying was Xia Zhi's attack just now, but it was still blocked in the end. On the other hand, Zhu Inkong and the others glanced at each other, and they were completely relieved and excited. They really did block it. Wait, where's that mysterious woman? Suddenly, Zhu Inkong noticed that something was off. Xia Zhi's figure couldn't be found in the heavens and the earth, and even her aura couldn't be found. Meanwhile, Xiaohao and the others noticed something unusual as well. Right, where did Xia Zhi go? Over there. Lin Sun suddenly smiled, and he pointed into the distance. She's already entered the city. Everyone raised their heads and looked over, and they instantly revealed expressions of disbelief. On the city wall, not far away from Zhu Inkong and the others, there was originally nothing there, but it didn't take long for a figure to gradually walk out from the void. Surprisingly, it was Xia Zhi. She had a slender figure, and she held a bone spear in her hand. She seemed extremely mysterious. The city wall was covered in a terrifying Saint Dao restriction formation, but it didn't react at all, as if it hadn't noticed Xia Zhi's existence at all. At the same time, Zhu Inkong's expression changed drastically, and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. He cried out involuntarily, as if he'd seen a ghost. How is this possible? Chapter 16:26. The city hadn't been breached, and the formation hadn't been damaged, but the enemy had appeared out of thin air above the city wall like a ghost. The unbelievable scene made Zhu Inkong and the others' hair stand on end. Even Xiaohao, Old Toad, and the others were dumbfounded. Was that even possible? Xia Ji, how did she do it? Only Lin Sun could tell that Xia Ji's previous attack was absolutely terrifying. It had shaken the entire city defense formation. However, it was all a pretense. Xia Ji's real goal wasn't to fight the formation head-on, but to take advantage of the situation to enter. However, even Lin Sun couldn't tell what kind of mysterious technique Xia Ji had used to appear so stealthily. Not only has my cultivation made successive breakthroughs over the years, but something unimaginable must have happened to Xia Ji as well. That's why her combat strength has become completely different from before. Lin Sun fell in a deep thought. Even with his current insight, he couldn't see through Xia Ji's combat strength. That in itself was incredible. Whoosh! To everyone's surprise, Xia Ji didn't pay any attention to Zhu Yingkong and the others after she appeared at the top of the city wall. Her figure flashed, and she flew into the city. The bigwigs on the city wall couldn't help but be startled. Shit! She's going to destroy the foundation of the formation. Zhu Yingkong's expression changed abruptly, and he roared, "Quick, stop her!" All of a sudden, everyone panicked and attacked without hesitation. If the foundation of the formation was destroyed, how could the city of Dao protectors defend itself? Quick, surround that woman. Kill. Don't let her get close to the foundation of the formation, no matter what. Deafening roars resounded in the sky above the city of Dao protectors. The countless experts of the ancient territory in the city were in an uproar. But to everyone's despair, all attempts to stop her were futile. Xia Ji's figure was like a dark flowing light. Not only was she extremely fast, but she also killed all the experts who got close to her in her path. No matter how high their cultivation was, or how many of them there were, they couldn't stop her. If one looked down from the sky, they would be able to clearly see a bloody path swiftly extending through the city. Bathed in the darkness of the eternal night, Xia Ji was like a sharp knife that left a trail of blood along the way. Blood-curdling screams, furious roars, and terrified shouts began to resound throughout the city, stirring up the winds and clouds. Those experts who had gone to the ancient desolation world to attack the city of Dao protectors a few days ago felt extremely familiar with those bloody scenes, and they felt extremely terrified as well. A few days ago, it was precisely this mysterious woman who had come alone. She had broken through the 9 divine Dao formations and slaughtered the cultivators of the 8 regions. In her hands, peerless saints were like weeds, and they were easily eliminated. She was like the legendary, invincible existence. Now, she had appeared once again. This time, she was in the city of Dao protectors where the ancient territories camp was located. The slaughter began. At the top of the city wall, when Zhu Yingkong saw the chaotic, bloody, and tragic scenes that were unfolding in the city, her entire body stiffened, and she felt as if she had fallen into an icy pit. Before, he had learned that Xia Ji was a mysterious figure with incomparably powerful combat power, even more terrible than Lin Sun. That being said, Zhu Yingkong was not afraid of her at all due to the sacred barrier protecting the city. However, he had never thought that this woman would be even more terrifying than he had imagined her to be. The Grand Formation was like an empty shell to her. The vast city of Dao protectors was like an uninhabited land to her. How was this possible? How is this possible? Zhu Yingkong's eyes were dazed. The flames of war raged in the city, and the casualties were rising rapidly. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that without the Grand Formation to rely on, he actually could not muster the courage to fight against that mysterious woman. Outside the city, waves of shrill screams rang out incessantly from the city, and even Lin Sun could not help but be moved. Even he had not expected that Xia Ji alone would possess the ability to break through the formation. When he looked at Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao, and the others, they also had looks of amazement on their faces as if they were looking at a god. She's invincible in this realm. Lin Sun finally came to a conclusion. Moreover, Xia Ji must have grasped an incredible and mysterious technique to be able to ignore the defensive power of the Grand Formation. Everyone, get ready. Once Miss Xia Ji breaks the city's grand formation, we'll kill our way in and slaughter the entire city. Old Toad shouted, and his killing intent surged. The others were seething with killing intent as well. The nine-realm battlefield was filled with the blood, tears, shame, and hatred of countless ancestors of the ancient Desolation Realm. Just look at the lofty and grand city of Tao Protector in the distance. How many ancestors' blood and bones were poured on it? Such humiliation and blood enmity should naturally be avenged. Bang! It wasn't long before the grand formation that covered the city of Tao Protector suddenly fluctuated violently, and the 36 divine moons that hung in the sky started to tremble and sway at this moment. Young master, that woman is too terrifying. We can't stop her at all. Anyone who gets close to her is dead. Young master, what should we do? That woman is destroying the foundation of the grand formation. Once the formation is gone, won't we be completely finished? Young master, chaotic voices resounded in Zhu Yingkong's ears like the buzzing of a myriad of annoying flies. It caused Zhu Yingkong's mind to be in disorder. An indescribable rage arose in his heart. Enough! He suddenly raised his head and roared. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked ferocious and terrifying. Everyone shuddered and kept quiet out of fear. Zhu Yingkong took a few deep breaths and barely managed to suppress the anxiety and uneasiness in his heart. However, he didn't know what to say at this moment, and there was an indescribable frustration on his gloomy face. He was the leader of the ancient Yin Territories camp, the Illumination Dragon Bloodline's Imperial Prince, and the Nine Regions battlefield was supposed to be the stage for him to display his brilliance and make a name for himself. But now, he suddenly realized that the Nine Regions battlefield was like a graveyard that was about to bury everything he had. A sense of frustration that he had never felt before surged into Zhu Yingkong's heart like a tide. He stood on the city wall and looked around with a blank mind. The 7 Regions Alliance Army couldn't do it. The 8 Regions Alliance Army couldn't do it. Even the top figures of the 8 Regions Alliance couldn't do it. Was the 9 Regions battle really going to be reversed, and the ancient Desolation Territories camp would win? When he thought of this, Lin Sun's figure suddenly appeared in Zhu Yingkong's mind. At the same time, his gaze fell on Lin Sun, who was in the distance. In an instant, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and his expression was ferocious. All the accumulated anger, uneasiness, and frustration in his heart erupted at this moment. Lin Sun, it's all your fault. It's all your fault, you bastard. He roared. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his voice was so loud that it shook the mountains and rivers. It was filled with deep-rooted hatred and anger, causing the wind and clouds to tremble. Lin Sun's expression didn't change, and he said casually, "Look, this is the leader of a territory. When he loses his support and is in a desperate situation, he's no different from a shrew cursing on the street." Old Toad and the others couldn't help but laugh. Zhu Yingkong obviously couldn't bear the blow and was going crazy. Boom! Suddenly, the city shook violently, and the formation swayed. The fluctuations produced by the formation decreased sharply at an alarming rate, like a punctured balloon that was leaking air. "Brother, make a decision quickly," Zhu Yingxue said anxiously and anxiously. A decision? Zhu Yingkong's body shook violently. He turned his head and saw that the city was filled with rivers of blood and smoke was everywhere. "Young lord, this city can't hold on any longer," a great figure said sorrowfully. The city of Tao Protectors had survived 2 battles among the 9 territories, and it had stood tall for countless years. But now, it was about to be destroyed in their hands. This made their hearts bleed, and they were devastated. "Forget it. Give the order to retreat. Let's try to escape as many as we can." Zhu Yingkong waved his hand dejectedly, as if he had lost all his strength. "Brother, what about you?" Zhu Yingxue was shocked. She felt that something was wrong. "This city is about to fall. How can I live on like this? If nothing unexpected happens, I, Zhu Yingkong, will become a sinner of the ancient Yin territory for all eternity." Zhu Yingkong's expression was gloomy. "Even if I go back, I will be condemned by the whole world. I can bear such infamy, but our candle dragon bloodline can't. At this point, he patted Zhu Yingshue's shoulder with a gentle expression and said, Sister, leave with them. I will bear the shame of this battle. No, I want to go with you. Zhu Yingshue's eyes were red, and she sounded like she was about to cry. Go. Zhu Yingkong waved his hand, and a peerless saint immediately stepped forward and took Zhu Yingxue away. She couldn't struggle no matter how hard she tried. Yingxue, don't think about taking revenge for me in the future. That Lin Sun isn't someone you can go against. Don't do anything stupid, Zhu Yingkong warned with a calm expression. He watched his sister and the others leave before he withdrew his gaze, and his expression was filled with resolution. Bang! Right at this moment, along with an earth-shattering rumble, the 36 divine moons that hung in the sky exploded into pieces one by one, and they transformed into a multicolored rain of light that rained down. The formation was destroyed. The enormous city of Tao protectors was completely exposed to the heavens and the earth. Zhu Yingkong stood alone at the top of the city. His clothes and long hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression was calm. He seemed as if he hadn't noticed the destruction of the Grand Formation at all. Behind him, all the experts from the ancient Yin territories camp fled in all directions like stray dogs. Every single one of them had panic on their faces, and the scene was extremely chaotic. None of them had expected that the city guarding formation would be destroyed so quickly, and it made every single one of them feel despair. For the sake of survival, they had no choice but to flee. Right in this extremely chaotic situation, Lin Sun's group appeared out of thin air. Every single one of them didn't conceal their killing intent at all. Leave Zhu Yingkong to me. I'll leave the rest of the matters in the city to you. Lin Sun's black eyes were dark and cold as he gave the order. Let's go. Without any hesitation, Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao, Ruowu, laughing at the heavens, and the others split up and charged toward the city that belonged to the ancient Yin territory. As for Lin Sun, he swiftly arrived at the top of the city, and his gaze locked on Zhu Yingkong as he said, It seems like you're going to fight to the death? Or perhaps you're going to put your life on the line and take me down with you? Zhu Yingkong's expression was stiff as he said, Didn't you want to learn about Bachi from me? I also want to fight you. If I lose, I'll tell you. Chapter 16:27. Lin Sun stared at Zhu Yingkong for a moment, then nodded and agreed, Okay. Zhu Yingkong stepped into the air and stood in the void. At this moment, he seemed to have become another person. His eyes were cold like lightning, and his aura was roaring. The decadence all over his body was swept away as if he had completely let go of everything in his heart. A strange light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. He noticed that Zhu Yingkong's state of mind had undergone a metamorphosis, making him completely different. This was a peerless figure. If it were any other ordinary powerhouse, they would have already collapsed and couldn't hold on after experiencing setbacks. But Zhu Yingkong was able to temper his state of mind further under the heavy setbacks. This was undoubtedly not simple. Before, I was invincible among the younger generation of the ancient Yin realm. No one in the same generation could enter my eyes. Even after entering the 9 regions battlefield, only Kuan Xiaoyu and Jian Qingshan were worthy of my attention. Zhu Yingkong said calmly, Now, I completely understand that the real opponent is never others, but myself. Break the illusion of the heart and examine the heart. Fame is nothing to me. His voice was neither happy nor sad. Lin Sun floated above the void and said, I can only say that it's too late for you to understand. In the city in the distance, the sounds of fighting shook the sky. Scenes of bloody slaughter were playing out one after another. Under the joint attack of Xiaohao and Old Toad, the powerhouses of the ancient Yin realm were almost unable to stop them. They were all frightened and fled in all directions. But all of this could no longer arouse Zhu Yingkong's emotions. He looked straight at Lin Sun and said, It's not too late. I can die without regrets if I learn the truth in the morning. After saying that, he spread out his body and fluttered his sleeves. With a clang, a black and white Taoist sword appeared in front of him. In an instant, his aura was extremely sharp. Go! The sound of the sword was like a tide, resounding through the 9 heavens. When the Taoist sword swept out, the everlasting night and the everlasting day alternated between heaven and earth, evolving into 2 kinds of sword qi, yin and yang, whistling out. The sword was divided into 2 forms, and black and white became mysterious. The power of the sword was great enough to split the mountains and rivers and divide the clear and turbid boundaries. Lin Sun's figure didn't move at all. He flicked his finger. A beam of Tai Xian sword qi shot out, and with a bang, it split apart the black and white that filled the sky and sent the Wei sword flying. Zhu Yingkong's body swayed slightly. He took a deep breath, and his body shone. Behind him, the phantom of a shining dragon appeared. Its eyes were as large as a lake, and they shone upon the myriad of worlds in the universe. Huh! Zhu Yingkong stepped forward, clasped his hands together, formed a sword seal, and fiercely stabbed forward. Boom! The Dao sword that had been blasted back rumbled, and it fused with the power of the shining dragon and shot out explosively. It was a simple sword, but it had an unstoppable edge. A strange light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. He could tell that Zhu Yingkong had also stepped into the threshold of seeking his own cultivation method. This sword strike was amazing. Unfortunately, it was still not enough for him. Rise! Swoosh! The Taishan sword qi that filled the sky surged out and crisscrossed with each other, forming a formidable and grand sword formation. After that, a world-shaking collision resounded. The clouds in the sky collapsed, space fell into disorder, and the lofty and towering city walls below rumbled and collapsed. Puff! Zhu Yingkong's body trembled violently, and he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of scarlet blood. His eyes flickered, and a terrifying light burst out. He noticed that Lin Sun's strength had grown a lot stronger than when he was in the battle of flying immortals. You can't do it. Tell me the clues about Ba Qi, and I can give you a dignified death. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back. His figure was out of this world, and his sleeves were fluttering in the wind. He looked like a banished immortal with peerless elegance. Again, Zhu Yingkong suddenly shouted, and his long hair flew up. His eyes were deep and bright, and his body was glowing. The nearby void cracked and collapsed under the pressure of his aura. This time, he charged at Lin Sun with a Dao sword like a burning light. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. This guy was fighting with his life. He and his sword became one, and he put all his strength into this strike. The destructive aura made the world dim. Lin Sun didn't even think about it. He formed a sword with his fingers and stabbed straight out. Swish! A streak of sword qi swept out with an unparalleled momentum. It was a one-way trip. When the 2 streaks of sword qi collided, the world was suddenly crushed like a canvas. The unparalleled turbulence of sword qi swept across all directions. Wherever it passed, the earth cracked and the mountains collapsed. Half of the enormous city of Dao protectors had been forcefully destroyed. Puff! In the void, Zhu Yingkong was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose, and there was a bloody hole in his chest. Lin Sun's figure just swayed a little, and his clothes fluttered. Zhu Yingkong steadied himself and coughed violently. With a complicated expression, he sighed, "How lucky the ancient desolation realm is to have you, Lin Sun. How sad the people of the 8 regions are." His hair was disheveled, his body was soaked in blood, and his face was pale and transparent. But his back was as straight as a spear. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. There was no joy, no sorrow, and no pity in them. The reason why he agreed to have a fair fight with Zhu Yingkong was not out of approval or appreciation, but to get the clues about Ba Qi. As for Zhu Yingkong, he might be a peerless figure, but he was not worthy of Lin Sun's attention and respect. Those who were not of the same race must have a different heart. This saying was absolutely true in the Battle of the 9 Regions. A long time ago, I heard from the seniors of my clan that the ancient Desolation Realm was the first overlord of the 9 regions. It was like a dominator, and the other 8 regions could only bow their heads and look up to it. Zhu Kong's eyes were in a trance, and he said softly, "Before this, I never believed it at all, because the ancient Desolation Realm is really too weak. It's like an ant under your feet. Would you care about its existence?" Speaking of this, he looked at Lin Sun again. Even now, the ancient Desolation Realm is still too weak. Without you, the ancient Desolation Realm would definitely lose this time. His words were calm, and he was not venting his anger. He was just stating a fact. Yes, even if the ancient Desolation Realm won a great victory this time, in Zhu Kong's eyes, the ancient Desolation Realm was still far inferior to the other 8 regions. Lin Sun looked calm. "I just want to know the clues about Ba Qi." The corner of Zhu Kong's mouth twitched, and he showed a touch of self-mockery. "That's right, the winner takes all. Since we lost, we should admit it." Ba Qi, one of the founding elders of the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect in the Ancient Yin territory, fought on the border battlefield all year round, and his cultivation was in the realm of Quasi-Emperor. This was Zhu Kong's answer. At the end of his words, a strange light flashed in Zhu Kong's eyes. "With your foundation, you can easily kill Ba Qi when you step into the realm of Quasi-Emperor in the future. But I'm worried that you can't bear the anger of the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect." "Oh." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Zhu Kong smiled. "I know you won't believe me, but you'll understand how terrifying the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect is in the future." Then, he looked up at the sky with a sad expression. After a long time, he looked at Lin Sun again, and his expression was emotionless. "It's not bad to be killed by you, Lin Sun." His voice became lower and lower, and in the end, there was no more sound. He stood upright in the void, his spine still straight, but the aura around him had been completely extinguished. Lin Sun looked at this scene, thought for a moment, and then waved his sleeve. Boom! An unfathomably deep pit cracked open on the ground. "As an enemy, you still have the strength of character. I said that I would give you a dignified death. Today, I will bury you here." As Lin Sun spoke, an invisible force spread out, carrying Zhu Kong's body into the pit. Then he buried the pit and built a simple grave in front of him, inscribed Tomb of Zhu Kong. "Big brother, why do you still build a grave for your enemy?" Old Toad had returned at some point, looking puzzled. "This is the difference between us and the 8 regions," Lin Sun said casually. Lin Sun said casually, and I promised him that I would give him a dignified death. He looked up into the distance. In the city of Dao Protectors, the battle was coming to an end. The city was full of signs of destruction, like a blood-soaked ruin. Before long, Alu, Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, and others returned one after another, each of them in high spirits and with a hearty look. The battle was over. In such a large city, except for some people who rushed to escape, the rest were all slaughtered. Awesome, awesome. That's what a man should do on the battlefield. Alu shouted. The immortal cause is to kill. After this battle, the camp of absolute ancient region has been uprooted by us, and there is no possibility for it to rise again. Xiaohao said with a smile, and a sense of exaltation appeared on his face. While everyone was talking, they saw Lin Sun rise into the air and sit cross-legged in the sky. He looked solemn, and his body was bursting with infinite light. It was just like a Buddha coming to the world. Waves of grand Zen, chanting with compassion, gushed out of Lin Sun's mouth, and then resounded between heaven and earth. Pure lotus flowers condensed in the void and then slowly fell down. Every single lotus flower was crystalline like glass, and they were formed from pure Buddhist energy. They were like lamps of guidance that guided the souls of the departed back home. This was the method recorded in the great scripture of solitude, and it had the magic of delivering the dead from suffering. What is Brother Lin doing? Someone was puzzled. Big Brother said a long time ago that when we destroy the enemy's city, we should bring back the remains of our ancestors and bury them in peace. Old Toad took a deep breath, with a touch of respect on his face. Everyone's emotions were stirred up. Looking at the solemn figure sitting high in the clouds, they were all moved. For a time, The world was silent, and only the grand chanting of Buddha resounded. Countless pure lotus flowers like glass were floating in and out of the ruined city. On this day, Lin Sun led a group of strong people from the ancient Desolation Realm to destroy the city of Tao Protectors in the Absolute Een Realm, slaughtered tens of thousands of enemies, and defeated the camp of the Absolute Een Realm. After leaving the Absolute Een Realm, Lin Sun and his people did not return to the camp of the ancient Desolation Realm, but directly went to the Blood Demon Realm, which was adjacent to the Absolute Een Realm. That was the camp of the Blood Demon Ancient Region. Chapter 1628. Blood Demon World. For Lin Sun, it was like visiting an old place. When the Nine Regions battlefield opened, he was moved to this place. It was also the underground palace in the depths of the God Refining Forest, where Lin Sun became a saint. However, this time, not only did they not encounter any obstacles, they didn't even see the shadow of the enemy. When they arrived at the city of Tao Protectors belonging to the Blood Demon Ancient Region, Lin Sun and the others were stunned. No one. The huge city was empty and cold. There wasn't even a fly, let alone a person. Damn, Xueqing left too decisively, didn't he? Alu was dumbfounded. He's the leader of a region. He actually ran away without fighting? Old Toad was stunned. Everyone was surprised and caught off guard. Only Lin Sun understood Xueqing. He knew how cautious he was, but he was also witty and resourceful. Only he would flee so decisively and without the slightest hesitation. He didn't care about his strength of character or dignity at all, and he deeply understood the path of being able to submit or stand tall. When he fled, he took the experts of the entire camp with him. His means are really amazing. Xiaohao sighed. Should we chase after him? Ruowu looked at Lin Sun. Forget it. It won't be too late to search for the enemy after we conquer the other territories one by one. Lin Sun thought for a while and finally gave up. The Blood Demon world was huge. If the enemy wanted to hide, it would take a lot of time and energy to find them. Not long after, Lin Sun used the same method to destroy the city of Tao Protectors in the Blood Demon world and retrieve the remains of the ancestors of the ancient Desolation Realm. On the same day, they left the Blood Demon world and embarked on a journey to the Skyfire world. Skyfire world. Everyone was in a state of panic. The 8 Regions Coalition army was defeated, and Lai Qian died in the fairy battlefield. Everything was like a storm, dealing a heavy blow to the Skyfire ancient region. The dragons were leaderless, and their vitality was greatly damaged. The enormous camp had long since fallen into chaos. When Lin Sun and the others arrived, the experts of the Skyfire ancient region tried to block them with the city defense formation. Who would have thought that summer solstice would appear and charge into the city, repeating what had happened in the ancient Een Realms camp not long ago? Soon, the great array was broken, and the experts of the Heavenly Fire ancient region in the city were in chaos. After less than 30 minutes of fighting, the city was also trampled by Lin Sun and his team, and countless enemies were slaughtered on the spot. Fresh blood and corpses were strewn all over the ground. In the end, only a small portion of the Skyfire ancient region's experts were lucky enough to escape, but it was difficult for them to do anything. Big brother, where are we going next? Alu looked at Lin Sun longingly. Continue to kill. Let attack in one go and catch them off guard. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He was very clearly aware that once the news of the ancient Een territory, ancient Blood Devil territory, and ancient Skyfire territory being breached successively spread out, the other camps would definitely become extremely vigilant, and they would either take full precautions or flee. No matter what the situation was, it would hinder their actions. Therefore, if he could kill his way over before the news spread, then he would undoubtedly be able to achieve the best effect of catching them off guard. Where are we going? Everyone was excited. Even though they had been to 3 camps, they didn't feel tired at all. Moreover, on the way, they could rest in the vast universe arc, which was enough to adjust their physical strength at all times. Dongsang territory. Lin Sun spat out 3 words. In the northernmost realm. Fuyao Si, in the city of Tao Protectors. Kuan Xiaoyu was cultivating and his cultivation was about to break through. If he could take the opportunity to enter the late stage of true sage realm before the danger came, he was absolutely confident that he could confront Lin Sun. Young master, bad news just came that the camp of the ancient Yin territory was breached, and the city was reduced to ruins. Even Zhu Inkong was killed by Lin Sun. An old servant panicked and rushed into the hall where Kuan Xiaoyu was cultivating in seclusion. Swish! Kuan Xiaoyu suddenly opened his eyes, and his face changed slightly. When did this happen? It is speculated that it was 4 hours ago. The old servant said in a trembling voice. Just yesterday, the Battle of the Fairies had just ended. Today, the camp of the ancient Yin territory was breached by a group of experts led by Lin Sun, and even Zhu Yingkong was killed. This was too terrifying. It should be known that Jian Qingchun, Qi Wushu, Lai Qian, Sherpohe, and Hua Hongxiao had died long ago. In the 9 regions battlefield, only Xue Qingyi, Zhu Yingkong, and Kuan Xiaoyu were still alive. Compared to the other camps that had lost their leaders, the camp of the ancient Yin territory, where Zhu Yingkong was obviously stronger. But it just so happened that the camp of the ancient Yin territory was the first to be destroyed. Is Lin Sun impatient? Kuan Xiaoyu's face darkened. After returning from the Battle of the Fairies yesterday, he sensed that something was wrong with the situation. He speculated that Lin Sun would definitely take action and take the initiative to attack. Therefore, he did not hesitate to gather all the forces of the northern underworld ancient territory and be on full alert. But he did not expect that Lin Sun would attack just 1 day later. Zhu Yingkong is the imperial prince of the Candle Dragon bloodline. He is most proficient in the Tao of spiritual tattoos. With the power of the formation of the city of Tao protectors, he is not afraid of any invasion. But in the end, he was defeated. Doesn't this mean that the power of the sacred formation of the city of Tao protectors can't stop Lin Sun? Kuan Xiaoyu's expression was uncertain. He sensed that something was wrong. Originally, he hoped that the power of the city of Tao protectors could protect the powerhouses of the northern underworld ancient territory. But now it seemed that such a defense would not work. Young master, bad news. We just received news that the powerhouses of the blood demon ancient territory have fled. Their city was destroyed by Lin Sun, who rushed over later. Suddenly, another gray-robed, middle-aged man hurried into the hall. Those words caused Kuan Xiaoyu's eyes to widen in disbelief. He asked subconsciously, "What about Xue Qingyi? Did he not resist?" The gray-robed man shook his head and said no. According to the scouts, Xue Qingyi abandoned the city and fled last night. He also ordered the other powerhouses of the blood demon ancient territory to flee as well. Kuan Xiaoyu was stunned at first. Then he slammed his palm on the table in front of him and cursed, "Damn Xue Qingyi. He's a cowardly piece of trash. He doesn't even have any dignity left. How shameful." Kuan Xiaoyu could not be blamed for being exasperated. A leader like Xue Qingyi had chosen to flee. Wasn't that equivalent to admitting defeat in the Battle of the 9 Territories? The most unbearable thing was that he was not ashamed of such a shameful thing. He even ordered the other powerhouses of the blood demon ancient territory to flee with him. He was simply too shameless. How could I be ranked among the 8 absolutes of green underworld with such trash in the past? How shameful! How shameful! Kuan Xiaoyu could no longer remain calm. The grievous news of Zhu Yingkong's death and the defeat of the ancient Yin territories camp had arrived. Then, the news of the blood demon ancient territories camp fleeing had spread. How could Kuan Xiaoyu sit still? After a long time, Kuan Xiaoyu gradually calmed down and said, "The situation is getting more and more serious. Since that little bastard Lin Sun has decided to attack, he will definitely not give up. Keep a close eye on what's happening in the outside world. If there's any movement, inform me immediately." With that, he began to cultivate. He was about to make a breakthrough in his cultivation. He wanted to see if he could improve his strength before Lin Sun arrived. However, in less than 4 hours, news came and interrupted Kuan Xiaoyu's cultivation. "Young master, the Heaven Fire Ancient Territories camp has also been defeated. Just like the extreme Yin territory and Blood Demon Ancient Territory, the city of Dao protectors has been razed to the ground. What? Kuan Xiaoyu's heart trembled. The aura that he was cultivating suddenly became chaotic, and he almost coughed up blood. In less than 12 hours, 3 camps have been destroyed. Does Lin Sun intend to take this opportunity to wipe out all the camps in one fell swoop? Kuan Xiaoyu's face was full of disbelief. The power of the formation of each city of Dao protectors was enough to kill a great saint, but it seemed to be useless against Lin Sun. Moreover, Lin Sun's attack speed was too fast. His momentum was like a bolt of lightning, sweeping away all obstacles in his way. It was enough to terrify anyone. Pass down the order. The entire city is on alert. Everyone, get ready for battle. Kuan Xiaoyu gritted his teeth and gave the order. Yes, the subordinate received the order and left. Kuan Xiaoyu sat there alone, feeling uneasy. In the past, who among the 8 regions would take the ancient desolation seriously? But now, everything had been reversed. The experts of the ancient desolation, who were regarded as 2-legged sheep, were now like an unstoppable scourge, bearing its sharp fangs at the 8 regions. This was simply unimaginable in the previous battle of the 9 regions. Forget it. It's just a bloody battle with all my might. Kuan Xiaoyu took a deep breath, tried to adjust his mind, and continued to cultivate. However, there seemed to be no end to the bad news today. Less than 6 hours later, another news came. The East Mulberry ancient region has been conquered. The city has been reduced to ruins, and there are countless casualties. The moment Kuan Xiaoyu heard the news, he was so angry that he almost coughed up blood. He stood up and couldn't help but roar. Why? Why is it like this? In the past, the Battle of the 9 Regions took at least 3 years to decide the outcome. But this time, only 2 years have passed. Several hours later, more news came. The Juli ancient region had been destroyed. At this point, Kuan Xiaoyu was no longer in the mood to cultivate. With his mind in a mess, he was worried that he would go berserk. Outside the main hall, the curtain of night was like water. It was already night. Kuan Xiaoyu felt depressed, and his chest felt stuffy. He strode out of the hall, facing the cold wind, and looked at the dark night in the distance. Hearing the bad news from one territory after another, Kuan Xiaoyu hesitated. In the end, should they continue to persevere? Should he follow Xue Qingyi and abandon the city and flee? Chapter 1629. The night was dark. The city of Dao protectors, where the northern Darkstar ancient territory was located, was brightly lit, but the atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. No one spoke. Everyone's face was filled with nervousness, anxiety, and uneasiness. In the past, when they heard that the experts from the ancient desolation territory were invading, they would only treat it as a joke. But with the news of the annihilation of the absolute Een, Blood Devil, Heavenly Fire, and Ninely Realms, they only had one feeling: fear. In less than a day, Lin Sun led a group of experts to destroy the various camps. Such a thunderous attack was enough to make anyone panic. Right now, the experts from a northern Darkstar ancient territory could only pin their hopes on Kuan Xiaoyu. But no one knew how much Kuan Xiaoyu was struggling, suffocating, and suffering at the moment. The night was getting darker. Kuan Xiaoyu stood alone in front of the main hall, leaning against the railing. The cold wind blew, and the night was as dark as ink. Darkness was everywhere. After a long time, he sighed. It was difficult to seek the Tao, difficult to compete, and difficult to find the right path. He drew his sword and looked around at a loss. He raised his hand and gently patted the cold railing. An indescribable sense of loss and loneliness surged in Kuan Xiaoyu's heart. It was a pity that the wind and rain made a hero short of breath. Young master, a gray-robed old man hurried over in the night with a solemn expression. The Great Heaven Ancient Territories camp has also been destroyed. Lin Sun fought against tens of thousands of sword cultivators with his supreme Sword Dao and didn't lose. The huge city of Dao protectors has been reduced to ruins. Kuan Xiaoyu's expression was blank. He suddenly understood Xue Qingyi. He wasn't a coward, but he already knew that after the flying immortal battle ended, no one in the entire 9 regions battlefield would be a match for Lin Sun. Absolute Een, Blood Devil, Heavenly Fire, Easter Mulberry, Ninely, Great Heaven. Now, only we in the Starfiend ancient territory are left. Kuin Xiaoyu murmured. Kuin Xiaoyu muttered. He felt an indescribable feeling of depression fill his chest, and he wished for nothing more than to disregard everything and just walk away. Young master, the leaders of the major forces in the city have come to greet you. Suddenly, someone hurried over to deliver the news. Kuin Xiaoyu was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. His eyes flickered, and he said after a while, "Let them come." Not long after, a group of men and women rushed over. All of them were the leaders of the major forces in the northern Darkstar ancient domain. However, every single one of them had a nervous and worried expression on their faces. Let me guess, all of you wouldn't have come here at a time like this because you intend to defend the city of Dao Protectors with me, right? Kuin Xiaoyu's gaze swept across everyone. He already had a bad feeling about this. The expressions of everyone froze, and they were slightly embarrassed. Young Master Xiaoyu, the current situation has reached an extremely critical moment. After our discussion, we all feel that we must make a decision. A white-haired, golden-robed old man spoke in a deep voice. The others nodded in agreement. "Oh, what do you want?" Kuin Xiaoyu's expression gradually turned cold. He'd already guessed some of the truth, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of sorrow in his heart. Lin Sun's momentum is like a rainbow as he swept through the 6 regions. In just a day, he destroyed the camp of the 6 regions. It can be concluded that it won't be long before the camp of the Starfiend ancient region will be destroyed. At this moment, At the end of his words, the golden-robed old man seemed to be a little ashamed, and he couldn't say a word. Kuin Xiaoyu helped him to say, "You want to withdraw as soon as possible, avoid the sharp edge, and leave this city to save your lives?" Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to look into Kuin Xiaoyu's eyes, but it was obvious that they had tacitly agreed. The night was getting darker, and the cold wind was like a knife, piercingly cold. Kuin Xiaoyu suddenly felt an indescribable sense of powerlessness, and his heart was about to explode. He took a few deep breaths and said, "If I don't agree, what will you do?" Everyone was silent, and no one answered. This question was really difficult to answer. Seeing this, Kuin Xiaoyu quietly clenched his hands, and the blue veins on the back of his hands bulged. He was almost unable to control the anger in his heart. How shameful it was to retreat without a fight. Since ancient times, in all the previous battles between the 9 regions, when had the northern underworld ancient region ever experienced such a situation of being terrified and retreating without a fight? It was just Lin Sun leading a group of experts from the ancient desolation domain. They were scared out of their wits even before the army arrived. Kuin Xiaoyu was so angry that his hair almost stood on end. He wasn't Xueqingyi, and he wasn't willing to admit defeat like this. His pride and dignity couldn't bear such a humiliating thing. Did you all decide like this? After a long time, Kuin Xiaoyu managed to suppress the anger in his heart. His voice was squeezed out of his teeth, and it was bone-chilling. Everyone stiffened and looked at each other. In the end, they all answered in silence. Yes, that was what they had decided. Right now, the ancient desolation domain seemed to be invincible, and they had the momentum to sweep the 9 regions battlefield. Fighting against them was no different from a mantis trying to stop a chariot or an ant trying to shake a tree. No one was willing to die, and no one was willing to die in the 9 regions battlefield. Seeing this, Kuin Xiaoyu suddenly thought of Zhuingkong. The ancient Yin domain was the first camp to be flattened. At that time, Zhuingkong didn't choose to retreat, but chose to fight Lin Sun head-on. Why did he do that? Wasn't he afraid of death? No, it was his pride and dignity that wouldn't allow him to do that. Otherwise, he would become the biggest laughingstock of the ancient Yin domain and be regarded as a sinner for all eternity. It's a pity that I don't have Xueqingyi's ability to make decisions, nor do I have Zhuingkong's will to die. I want to accept my fate, but I'm unwilling. I want to die, but I'm greedy for life, Kuin Xiaoyu muttered to himself in a daze. The atmosphere became more and more stifling. Child Xiaoyu, time is of the essence. The enemy's army may arrive at the city at any time. The lives of tens of thousands of people in the city are in your hands. Please make a prompt decision. The golden-robed elder gritted his teeth and said, Child Xiaoyu, please make a prompt decision. The others also spoke up. At this moment, Kuan Xiaoyu's heart was completely cold. He finally understood the meaning of this sentence. Let's go, let's all go. Kuan Xiaoyu turned around and leaned against the railing, looking at the night sky in the distance. His heart was withered, and he was dispirited. The leaders of the major forces of the Northern Underworld domain seemed to be relieved. They all raised their heads and looked at Kuan Xiaoyu, who had his back to them. In the end, they didn't say anything and turned to leave. Everyone fled in the face of disaster. When everyone left, Kuan Xiaoyu's long hair suddenly turned snow white under the night sky. There was only emptiness and frustration left in his eyes. He had cultivated for decades and was extremely talented. He believed that he wasn't inferior to anyone since ancient times, and he was even more outstanding than the ancients. In the end, he was stuck here alone. Darkness was imminent, and there was no one to talk to in the vast mountains and rivers. His heart was filled with hatred. Suddenly, Kuan Xiaoyu roared. His resentment, helplessness, and sorrow were like a landslide and a tsunami venting in the night sky. The entire city was shocked. When I looked at the place where Kuan Xiaoyu stood, he was long gone. On this night, one of the Green Underworld 8 regions, the leader of the younger generation of the Northern Underworld domain, the prince of the Kuan race, Xiaohao, lost control of his emotions and left in a frenzy. Simply put, Kuan Xiaoyu had gone mad. On this night, the Northern Underworld city of Dao Protectors was filled with people fleeing in panic. Every single one of them was as terrified as a stray dog. They watched him build a tall building, they watched him entertain guests, and they watched him collapse. When dawn broke, the vast universe arc appeared in front of the Northern Underworld domain's city of Dao Protectors. However, what he saw was an empty city filled with desolation and desolation. Damn it, that Kuan Xiaoyu is so despicable. He fled without fighting, just like Xue Qingyi. The old toad was dumbfounded. The others were also in a daze. In a single day, they traveled to various parts of the 9 regions battlefield. They were like gods sweeping through the world, trampling through city after city and destroying territory after territory. They advanced triumphantly all the way, settling debts of gratitude and enmity quickly. This was absolutely impossible in the past. It was like a hot-blooded, heroic, and passionate dream that seemed so unreal. But now, it had happened one after another. Even when they broke through the ancient Star Fiend Domain's camp and arrived at the Northern Underworld Domain's camp, everyone was still in a daze. In just a single day, they swept through the 8 regions, destroyed cities, and annihilated enemies. They came like a bolt of lightning and left like a clear ray of light. Something like this had never happened in the previous 2 battles of the 9 regions. There are only a few people in this world who aren't afraid of death. The higher one's position is, the more they are afraid of death. Xiaohao sighed. We really won. Ruo Wu was in a daze, as if she couldn't believe it. We won. The others nodded. They had trampled the 8 regions to avenge their ancestors. The blood and tears of countless ancestors have been repaid today. Laughing at the heavens laughed heroically. From today onward, the ancient desolation domain will reign supreme in the 9 regions battlefield. We won. We really won. Some people laughed with tears in their eyes. Tears didn't mean that they weren't strong. Only those who shed tears understood how hard it was to win this great victory. Lin Sun didn't say anything else. He rose into the air and sat cross-legged under the sky. His expression was tranquil and solemn as he chanted the method of salvation. The sky was clear, and the Buddha's aura was vast. Millions of lotuses that were as clear as glass covered the huge city. The atmosphere was solemn, and Lin Sun couldn't calm down either. Today, they had finally swept through the 8 regions and flattened the cities of Dao Protectors. How could Lin Sun not feel happy? A little great spirit was like a gust of wind from 1,000 miles away. Only those who had experienced the fierce battles in the Nine Regions battlefield understood the significance of this great victory for the ancient Desolation domain. In the past years, they had been humiliated, resentful, and bowed their heads. Today they had finally won. In the field, only Xia Ji stood there quietly. She wore a black robe, and the brim of her hat covered her face. The dark light of the eternal night bathed her body. So what if the ancient Desolation domain had won? Lin Sun was the only person in her eyes. Apart from that, there was nothing else. On this day, Lin Sun led a group of strong cultivators of the ancient Desolation domain to destroy the 8 regions battlefield and achieved an unprecedented victory. Since ancient times, who had not seen this? Today, his achievements surpassed the ancients. Chapter 16:30. Tension and anxiety spread in the camp of the ancient Desolation realm. A day had passed. All the experts of the ancient Desolation realm were waiting in the city. They didn't know what had happened outside. Zhao Jingxian stood on the city wall. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and her figure was slender and graceful. She was also waiting. The morning light sprinkled on her clear and beautiful face, giving her a soft and holy luster. As Zhao Jingxian saw the vast universe arc speeding towards them from the horizon, gradually becoming larger and larger in her field of vision, her originally tense heart gradually calmed down. Her beautiful eyes lit up with a dazzling light. They were back. An indescribable sense of relief, excitement, and joy surged in Zhao Jingshuan's heart like a tide, and a smile appeared on her face. That touch of flirtatiousness seemed especially bright and beautiful in the morning light. They're back. An excited exclamation sounded in the city of Dao protectors. Then the whole city was boiling. Countless people craned their necks and couldn't help but cheer when they saw the vast universe arc pressing down on the clouds. On the vast universe arc, Lin Sun, Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao, Ruowu, and the others looked at each other and smiled. On this day, the camp of the ancient Desolation realm was in an uproar. The news of the 8 territories being wiped out shocked all the experts of the ancient Desolation realm. We won. The ancient Desolation realm won the battle of the 9 territories. Someone laughed wildly and ran on the street, overjoyed. All the hatred and shame from the ancient times have been wiped out today. This is great. This is great. Bring me some wine. Someone was so excited that his body trembled. Sob, senior brother, senior sister, if you knew this in the afterlife, you would die in peace. Someone sat on the ground and wept bitterly. He fought on the battlefield for a lifetime, and he defeated millions with his sword. Senior Lin's achievement will go down in history and be remembered by future generations. Someone sang passionately. This is the real demeanor of a leader. The pride of a territory, the backbone of a great world. Senior Lin is the only one who can do this. He turned the tide with his own strength and wiped out all the enemies in the 8 territories. There are 80,000 sages in the past and present, but only one person can do it. Countless voices echoed in the city for a long time. The discussion about Lin Sun was full of undisguised admiration, fanaticism, and respect. Everyone knew that without Lin Sun, there would be no victory for the ancient Desolation realm since the beginning of the Battle of the 9 Regions. Didn't you see the Lord killing his way through 30,000 li, suppressing a city so that no one came out? Did you not see the 7 regions surrounding Gu City, laughing and talking as they slaughtered the enemies? Don't you see, in the great formation of the Black Cliff Sea, who can dominate? Don't you see, in the Battle of the Fairy Realm's battle apex, the heroes are like stars falling like rain? Don't you see, Lin Sun had done too many amazing deeds, each of which was a miracle enough to amaze the world. This night, the hall where Lin Sun stayed was filled with constant laughter and toasts. How many times can one laugh in one's life? One must be drunk when they meet in a drinking contest. It was not until the wee hours of the morning that the guests and friends gradually dispersed. The courtyard was empty, and Xia Ji sat quietly in front of the stone steps. The brim of the hat covering her face had been lifted, revealing a beautiful face that could make the world dim. Even Zhao Jingxian, when she inadvertently glimpsed this scene, showed a dull look, and a trace of shock arose in her heart. She was so beautiful. The kind of beauty from inside to outside was as exquisite as a perfect masterpiece from God, without a trace of flaw. She sat there casually with bright eyes and white teeth, black eyebrows, quiet, ethereal, and cold temperament. She wore a black robe with wide sleeves, which set off her white and tender skin. Looking at her, a sentence suddenly flashed in Zhao Jingshuan's mind. There is a beauty here, isolated from the world, whose first glance can topple a city, and a second glance can topple a country. Lin Sun's heart was beating violently. After more than 10 years, this girl had actually grown into a slim and graceful, peerless beauty. You talk, I'll go to have a rest first. After coming to her senses, Zhao Jingxian turned around and left. But when she returned to her room, her heart was quite unsettled. In the past, Xia Ji was just a fresh, unique, and beautiful girl. In Zhao Jingshuan's heart, she had always regarded her as a younger sister. But tonight, for the first time, she realized that Xia Ji was no longer the former Xia Ji. After many years, she became more and more beautiful. That kind of beauty made Zhao Jingshuan's heart tremble, amazed and shocked. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Zhao Jingxian wouldn't have believed that there was such a beautiful person in the world. As a woman, she couldn't help but feel ashamed of her inferiority. Fortunately, she has been covering her face. Otherwise, which man in the world can fall for her? Sitting in front of the bed, Zhao Jingxian sighed with emotion in her heart. From beginning to end, she had never thought of competing with Xia Ji, because she knew that in Lin Sun's heart, Xia Ji was just like a younger sister. From a long time ago, they had been relying on each other. But now, Zhao Jingxian was a little uncertain. Immediately, Zhao Jingxian couldn't help laughing. What was wrong with her? Was it because she cared too much about him? Well, as long as he doesn't betray me. After a long time, Zhao Jingxian murmured in her heart. In the courtyard, Lin Sun and Xia Ji sat side by side, just like when they were in Feiyun village. It suddenly occurred to Lin Sun that every time he was with Xia Ji, he would never feel any worry or have any distracting thoughts. It was as if they were the only two people left in the world. Lin Sun, I'm leaving. Suddenly, Xia Ji opened her mouth. Her voice was as clear, calm, and sweet as ever. Leaving? Lin Sun was stunned. Xia Ji nodded and said, Yes, these years, I have been fighting in the dark. In the battle, I perished and transformed. Only a few days ago did I have the power to leave the dark. I came to you this time because I could sense your breath. I'm very happy to see you safe and sound. Well, it's the first time I've been so happy in these years. Her voice, as clear as spring water, resounded in the night. Looking at Xia Ji's profile, Lin Sun suddenly felt an indescribable pity in his heart. What had she experienced in these years? Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, Where are you going this time? Xia Ji said, That's my battlefield alone. If I want to practice 9 turns of quietus, that's the only place where I can reach nirvana. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said, In fact, you don't have to go. With my current strength, I won't let you be wronged. He really didn't want Xia Ji to fight alone again. Xia Ji shook her head and said, After this transformation, I know some things which are related to me and you. I must become very, very strong. Lin Sun frowned and vaguely felt that there was something wrong in Xia Ji's words, as if she had perceived some danger, which forced her to go all out to become stronger. And this danger was very likely to be related to him, not Xia Ji. What on earth is it? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Xia Ji was silent for a moment, and then said, The collapse of the sky and the collapse of the earth comes from behind. The fog blocks the way ahead. Thousands of killing tribulations come for you alone. Lin Sun's mind was like being struck by lightning. He instantly remembered that the old priest in the observatory had said similar words when he was in Xiao Empire. However, there was no killing tribulations in the old priest's words. Did Xia Ji see any omen? You believe this? After a while, Lin Sun calmed down and said, everyone has to face all kinds of tribulations. If you want to continue to pursue the Tao, no matter who in the world, it is inevitable. Since you have chosen this path, you just need to face the difficulties. If you worry about these, you don't have to force yourself to do things you don't like. Xia Ji said without thinking, this kind of thing doesn't matter whether I like it or not. Since I know it, I must help you solve it. This is my destiny. Lin Sun frowned. Destiny? I don't believe in this. Xia Ji asked in reply, but if there is no destiny, why can you and I meet? Why am I only willing to let you into my world out of all the worlds in the heavens? Besides, I am only willing to do what is good for you. I don't care about anything else. Looking at Xia Ji's serious look, Lin Sun was silent for a long time. Then he sighed and said, can you choose to stay for me? Xia Ji shook her head. No, Lin Sun, didn't you say that there is no real separation unless we're separated by life and death? I just leave temporarily. In the future, I will definitely stay with you forever. Lin Sun didn't know what to say for a while. Anger? But Xia Ji always did this for his own good. Happiness? Not at all. Lin Sun had become an invincible existence in the 9-region battlefield from a humble beginning to now. In the peerless saint realm, he could show disdain for all. But now, he found that there were some things that even he could do nothing about. For example, the problem of Xia Ji staying or leaving. Is it because I'm not strong enough? Lin Sun murmured. Was the peerless saint realm not strong enough to stop and resolve the tribulation that Xia Ji mentioned? Xia Ji turned her face and stared at Lin Sun with eyes as clear as the stars in the sky. She said seriously, no, you're already very strong, but there are many things in this world that are always aimed at people like you. And what I'm talking about is still far away from you. This is the best way, so that I have enough time to prepare the means to deal with it. At this point, Lin Sun completely understood that Xia Ji's will could no longer be changed, which made him feel a sense of loss. How strong should it be that Xia Ji didn't have to leave so decisively because of him, to become the king of saints? Or the emperor realm? Suddenly, an unspeakable emotion surged in Lin Sun's heart. He turned around, looked into Xia Ji's eyes, and said, one day, I will make you never leave, ever. Xia Ji was stunned, and a smile appeared on her beautiful and flawless face. Chapter 1631. In the following days, Lin Sun and Xia Ji left the city of Tao Protectors and roamed the 9 regions battlefield, traversing the mountains and rivers, strolling beneath the stars. Along the way, Lin Sun completely put aside all worldly affairs and took out all the delicious food, fun, and interesting things he had collected over the years. But what made Lin Sun speechless was that Xia Ji only liked to eat and had no interest in those fun and interesting treasures. Moreover, Xia Ji's favorite food was meat, whether it was cooked, fried, pan-fried, roasted, braised, stewed, simmered. As long as it was meat, she wouldn't reject it. Lin couldn't help sighing with emotion that it was a blessing to be able to eat. Xia Ji had always been a woman of few words. She just accompanied Lin Sun quietly. Sometimes Lin Sun couldn't help but want to tease her, but she always looked at him as if he was a child. Every time this happened, Lin couldn't help but feel embarrassed, then speechless, and then burst into laughter. It seemed that only in front of Xia Ji would he be so childish. A summer solstice, a pot of wine, a carefree and unfettered journey. How many people could be so happy? Unfortunately, good times were always short-lived. Half a month later, Xia Ji finally had to leave. Lin Sun, wait for me. Just like when she left in the past, this time, Xia Ji spoke seriously. Go, go. Lin Sun also thought it through. He took out his gourd and waved goodbye. Xia Ji came up and threw herself into Lin Sun's arms. Her slender and delicate body was as soft as nephrite, and a cold and ethereal body fragrance filled the air. Lin took a deep breath and hugged Xia Ji tightly, fearing that she would disappear the next moment. You can marry her, but you have to defeat me first. Xia Ji suddenly opened her mouth, which made Lin Sun's body suddenly stiff and his face dull for a moment. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. She was, of course, Zhao Jingxian, but Lin didn't expect that Xia Ji was still thinking about it. All right. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun said heroically, how about giving a try now? Xia Ji raised her eyes and looked at Lin's eager look. Are you in such a hurry? Embarrassed, Lin said, next time then. Xia Ji took 2 steps back, and a bone spear suddenly appeared in her palm. She stabbed it gently in the void and rushed to Lin Sun. It was simple and not fancy at all, but in Lin Sun's eyes, the spear was like the sharpest blade in the world, which could pierce through everything. No matter how he dodged, he couldn't avoid its sharpness. It felt as if the grand Tao had descended. The spear was the Tao, and the Tao was the spear. The Tao was omnipresent, and the spear was the same. Time seemed to have become incomparably long at this moment. Lin Sun's pupils contracted. The fighting instinct honed by years of fighting made him react in an instant. Retreat. But at this moment, everything in front of him disappeared. The Tao was gone, and the spear was gone. In the distance, Summer Solstice stood alone, calm and composed. Lin Sun sighed softly. He had completely concluded that Xia Ji was invincible in this realm. Even if they fought, he might have a chance to win, but the hope was not big. Summer Solstice came over and asked, do you still want to try? This was not a show of strength, but made Lin Sun smile bitterly and say, why should we fight at this time? Xia Ji nodded and stepped forward. Suddenly, a mischievous smile appeared on her beautiful face, and she said, Lin Sun, you are as lovely as Xiao Xiao. Who is Xiao Xiao? Lin Sun was stunned. In the next moment, he saw a fist-sized rabbit with light pink fur appear on Xia Ji's shoulder. Its pair of black eyes were full of spirit. The rabbit curled its lips and grinned, showing a pair of crystal white rabbit teeth, which looked extremely funny. But Lin Sun's face almost darkened. Xia Ji actually said that he was as lovely as a pink rabbit. If this was spread out, how would the heroes in the ancient Desolation territory think of him? But Xia Ji smiled brightly and teased the pink rabbit on her shoulder, saying, look, Xiao Xiao is so lovely when he smiles. The pink rabbit opened its mouth cooperatively and laughed happily, making squeaking sounds and rolling around on Xia Ji's shoulder like a pink fluffy ball. The beauty had the appearance of a young girl, and her figure was slender and elegant. She was so beautiful that she was like an otherworldly fairy, and it was very rare for her to reveal such a brilliant smile. It was also at this time that Lin Sun suddenly found that no matter how powerful and beautiful Xia Ji was, there was still a pure and childlike character in her heart. However, she rarely showed it. For a moment, looking at the lively and beautiful Xia Ji, Lin Sun was in a trance and his mood fluctuated. Let's go. It didn't take long for Xia Ji to leave. She was never a sloppy person. In the void, her figure went farther and farther. On her shoulder, the pink rabbit grinned and waved its little paws, saying goodbye to Lin Sun. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun couldn't help laughing and wave his hand. A dark void door appeared in the sky. Summer Solstice stepped into it and disappeared. That portal can ignore the power of the law of heaven and earth in the 9-region battlefield. What kind of place did Xia Ji go to? Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. He had seen this dark portal. When Xia Ji left the Star Chest Sea, she also entered this portal. However, Lin Sun found at this moment that this dark portal was not simple. Xia Ji left. For the camp of the ancient Desolation territory, there was no big movement except for some size. The 8 regions were conquered with countless casualties, but the camp of the ancient Desolation territory gained a large amount of spoils. After these spoils were sorted out and counted, they were distributed one by one. Even Zhao Jingxian and others, who didn't participate in the battle, got a share. Silver, Tian, and the big blackbird also got something. Among them, Lin Sun gained the most, because the spoils that originally belonged to Xia Ji were all given to him. Lin Sun was shocked when he counted the holy treasures he got. There were more than 400 of them, and there were many precious and rare holy treasures. In addition, there were a large number of magic materials, elixirs, rare treasures, secret books, minerals. There were countless of them. Next, there were only two things left for the camp of the ancient desolation territory. One was to pursue and encircle the remaining enemy forces who fled to different places. As the saying goes, it is better to pursue a cornered enemy bravely than to seek fame. To deal with the enemy, they should be as cold as the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. With Xiaohao and Ruo Wu as the leaders, the overmatches of the camp of the ancient desolation territory had begun to take action. The second thing was to find the opportunity to become a saint. There was still 1 year before the end of the Battle of the Nine Regions. During this year, there would be many mysterious secret realms coming to the battlefield, including some secret realms like prison and magnetism that had the opportunity to become a saint. In the camp of the ancient desolation territory, there were still many overmatches who had the aptitude to become a saint but couldn't. This task was left to the big blackbird, Old Toad, and Alu. Lin Sun, on the other hand, put aside everything and devoted his mind to building the city. The current city of Tao Protector might be powerful, but after the invasion of the 8-territory coalition army, Lin Sun realized that it was far from enough to make the city immortal in the future. 3 months later, the city of Tao Protector was renewed. The golden city wall glowed with vitality and communicated with the power of heaven and earth. It was like a sacred place in the legends. During these 3 months, Lin Sun had built a brand new holy formation based on the 4 ultimate and 8 defenses formation with a large number of magic materials. It was called the True Martial Formation of the Void. This formation could control the power of the Void and transform it into the True Martial Prohibition. It could kill enemies from a distance of 8,000 feet. Its power was unpredictable. In this way, even if the enemy appeared at a distance of 8,000 feet, they would be attacked. This greatly made up for the shortcoming of the 4 ultimate and 8 defenses formation. Moreover, after the city was further repaired, it would become more and more solid under the nourishment of the power of the sacred formation. In short, a city was like a defensive holy treasure, and its quality would only become higher and higher when it was nurtured in the formation. After doing all this, Lin Sun put aside everything at hand and decided to create his own method before the Battle of the 9 Territories came to an end. It was also on this day that Lin Sun left the city of Tao Protector. The sky was blue, and white clouds were like cotton. Lin Sun sat cross-legged in front of a lake that was as green as a gem. He held a bamboo fishing rod and a green wine gourd beside him. He was fishing in a leisurely manner. A cool breeze blew, and the blue waves rippled. Above his head were white clouds, and the surroundings were quiet and beautiful. 1 day later, Lin Sun's mind was empty, and there were no thoughts in his mind. He was fishing alone on the blue lake, motionless. 3 days later, Lin Sun's aura had disappeared, and there was no trace of fluctuation. 7 days later, a bird with colorful wings flew over and landed on Lin Sun's shoulder. It was combing its feathers with its beak, but it didn't realize that it was standing on a living creature. 10 days later, Lin Sun opened his eyes, and his wrist holding the fishing rod shook slightly. Clatter, an amazing scene appeared. The vast lake, covering an area of thousands of acres, was caught by a hair-thin fishing line. The surface of the water slowly rose, and the entire lake soon appeared in midair. It was like a huge crystal, shining with a gorgeous luster under the sunlight. Inside the crystal, there were colorful gravel and rocks, swaying water plants, and schools of fish swimming back and forth in groups. The huge lake was caught in the air, but not a drop of water fell. The scenery of the lake was presented in the field of vision. Moreover, it gave people a feeling that the lake should be suspended in the void and had an indescribable harmony with this side of the world. Lin Sun couldn't help but frown at this scene. Clatter! The next moment, the lake landed on the ground again, and all the strange phenomena disappeared. Holding the empty fishing rod, Lin Sun murmured, "A naked fish gets out of the abyss and comes back to the world free and unfettered. A free heart is the essence of a transcendent state of mind. Unfortunately, no matter how transcendent the state of mind is, it's useless for me to create my own method. This method should be found in oneself." After that, Lin Sun stood up, put his hands behind his back, and stepped on the lake. Chapter 1632. If Lin Sun wanted to create his own method, he could have created a suitable method with his current understanding of the Saint Realm. But it was very difficult to create the first and strongest method in the world. Lin Sun had never been a person who was willing to make do on the road of Tao. Since he wanted to do it, he should pursue the extreme perfection. Just like his pursuit of Tao, he forged the supreme Taoist foundation, cultivated the great way that no one had practiced since ancient times, and opened up a road that had never existed since ancient times. Only in this way could he be truly invincible on the road of Tao. Lin Sun would never have achieved what he had today if he didn't have such a desire to seek Tao. In the following time, Lin Sun wandered all the way between heaven and earth. Sometimes he practiced martial arts, sometimes he practiced, and sometimes he observed the landscape and the stars. Half a month passed like this. Unknowingly, Lin Sun had returned to the ancient wasteland world and appeared in front of the city of Tao. But he suddenly stopped and froze when he was 3 kilometers away from the city wall. During these past few days, his mind was immersed in his cultivation, and his entire body revealed a strange state of being in a trance, while boundless fortune resided within it. He didn't know what day it was, and he didn't know where he was. He had forgotten everything in the world. It was also at this moment that he suddenly had an epiphany. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Lin Sun's mind was empty. Scenes of cultivation along the way emerged in his mind, and all kinds of inspirations and wonderful ideas emerged like spring water. A little divine light appeared in his mind, and the trance was left behind. "Hey, what is Brother Lin going to do?" On the city wall, Xiaohao was a little surprised. Establishing his own method, the big black bird flapped its wings and said slowly. It could see that Lin Sun's current state was quite mysterious, and it was a manifestation of an epiphany. Creating his own method and forging the path of invincibility in this realm. Xiaohao was surprised. In my opinion, this boy has a big plan. The method he seeks must be the first-class invincible method since ancient times. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to delay until now. The big black bird's eyes were deep. Only it understood how vast and boundless the universe was, and it was unknown how many peerless geniuses that could shock the ages had been born there. In comparison, they were the real gods, favored ones. Some people's talent was the best in the world, and they were known as the Son of God. Once they became saints, they would be invincible and unparalleled. Some people's bloodlines were inherited from the ancient emperors. They were born with the emperor's blood flowing in their bodies, and their talent was far beyond that of others. There were some people who were born along with the fate of heaven and earth. They possessed wondrous Tao bodies and cultivated unmatched inheritances. Their divine force was matchless, and they roared through the wind and clouds. Some people, they were the true overlords of the universe. They were invincible figures amongst their peers, and they possessed great fortune and fortune that was sufficient to make the eyes of anyone go red with envy. Compared to them, it was enough to make countless people pale in comparison. As far as the blackbird was concerned, the path Lin Sun sought now was different from these geniuses. What he sought was unprecedented strength that crushed the ages. In ancient times, there were countless geniuses who could become invincible among the world, and who of Son of Heaven. At the very least, the large blackbird knew that no matter if it was the primeval era, or the current era, there were people throughout the world who might be able to reign supreme for a period of time and look down upon all. However, it was almost impossible to make all the prodigies bow their heads. The big blackbird didn't know whether Lin Sun could achieve this, but could see that what Lin Sun was seeking now was an almost impossible path. At the thought of this, the big black bird couldn't help but sigh with emotion. What a freak. Isn't he afraid that the heavens will be jealous of his talent and cause him to meet a premature end? Boom! In the sky above Lin Sun's figure, a mighty and peerless divine Dharma emerged abruptly, and it performed punches under the sky, shaking the world, showing the scene of the sun and the moon sinking and all things collapsing. The terrifying fist energy drew upon the great force of Zhou Su, causing the weather in all directions to change. At this moment, all the experts in the city of Tao Protectors were alarmed, and they thought it was an enemy attack. After all, the impetus of such an attack was too terrifying. But when they saw clearly that it was Lin Sun's Dharma image that was performing, all of them were dumbfounded, and their hearts trembled as they felt a kind of oppression that assaulted their faces. Even the peerless sages were secretly shocked. This fist technique was simply too powerful, causing them to feel a chill down their spines as they looked at it from afar. In next to no time, the divine Dharma image transformed into a true dragon. The true dragon's body was tens of thousands of meters long, and it stretched into the sky while countless blazing rays of the Tao descended from its body. Every single dragon scale was branded with mysterious and dense markings of the Tao. It moved gracefully in the sky, swallowed the sun, moon, wind, lightning, and threw the world into chaos. The terrifying pressure of the true dragon caused countless experts of the ancient desolation to almost suffocate. Only now did Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, and the other peak sages realize that Lin Sun was actually formidable to such an extent. After the true dragon, it was the 6 slashes of heavenly origin, the great divination finger, the Taishian sword Qi, the great scripture of tranquility. It was also at this moment that everyone realized that Lin Sun was performing techniques. Every single technique possessed earth-shattering might, and it was terrifying to the point that it was capable of causing the world to tremble and even sages to be unable to comprehend it. Because such techniques contained the energy of the grand Tao within them, and it was too shocking. If one's cultivation realm wasn't high enough, it would be utterly impossible to comprehend its profundities. However, there were also many experts that obtained a great deal of comprehension from observing it. But even more experts felt their vital energy and blood roil, and it was so uncomfortable that they almost coughed up blood. So, they didn't dare to force themselves to observe it any longer. Such techniques weren't something they could comprehend in detail. Time flew by. In the end, the divine Dharma image in the sky above Lin Sun's figure grew more and more majestic, and its might grew more and more terrifying. It was like an immortal was performing, and it drew upon the power of the heavens and the earth while the sky was covered by the dazzling light of the Tao. Faintly, the sounds of sages chanting scriptures and fiend gods howling resounded, and numerous flowers of the grand Tao drifted down from the sky, while divine radiance and auspicious light descended like rain. The shapeless and colorless sounds of the Tao, Sanskrit, Zen, immortal, divine, and scholarly struck the hearts of every single cultivator, and they rumbled and surged without end. Even if one closed one's ears and abandoned one's senses, such sounds would still surge in one's heart, and it caused one's mind to be in disorder while one's was on the verge of being shaken and collapsing. Countless people were astounded and retreated successively. Even peak sages like Xiaohao and Ruo Wu had to circulate their strength in order to barely suppress the turbulence in their hearts. Moreover, there was a trace of shock on their faces. The art is connected with the Tao, and the Tao is in the body. The wonders of the Tao are like the ancient sages studying scriptures, and they resonate with the heavens and the earth and harmonize with the grand Tao. If one's strength is insufficient and comprehension isn't sufficient, forcing oneself to observe it is bound to cause harm instead. The big black bird's eyes shone as it murmured, and it was also amazed in its heart. In the end, the divine Dharma image that stood proudly between the heavens and the earth suddenly turned into a rain of light that covered the sky. Every rain of light was like a scripture, a string of Taoist texts, and they shone brilliantly between the heavens and the earth. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, opened his mouth and inhaled. It was like a whale swallowing water. Boom! Countless Taoist texts cast by the rain of light and pages of shining scriptures poured into Lin Sun's body like a myriad of streams returning to the origin. Chapter 1633. Pages of Tao poured into Lin Sun's body like a tide. Soon, everything returned to silence, and the world returned to its previous tranquility. Everyone watching from the top of the city wall couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The scene just now was simply too shocking. At this time, in Lin Sun's body, the sound of Taoist scriptures resounded, as if the Taoist ancestor was preaching and the gods were performing. All kinds of Taoism power circulated in Lin Sun's body, surging in his internal organs, sea of qi, and even bones and skin. The aura on Lin Sun's body became more and more ancient and vast. He was like the incarnation of the Great Way, the source of all magic. His whole body was like a furnace of the Great Way, boiling and rumbling. Fuse, when his spirit, qi, and spirit reached an unprecedentedly perfect state, Lin Sun began to create the method without hesitation. Rumble. At that instant, it was like chaos had just been split open within his body. The various Tao technique inheritances transformed into dazzling scriptures of the Grand Tao, and they fused together with the energy of the Grand Tao in his body before finally transforming into a furnace. Heaven and earth as the furnace, creation as the work, yin and yang as the charcoal, and all living things as the copper. At this time, Lin Sun used himself as a furnace. He used the star-engulfing dome, true dragon, taiji, water and fire, undying, and other great Tao profundities as his tools. Essence, qi, and spirit were the charcoal. Using all his techniques as copper. With this as the foundation, one could contain 10,000 Taos in one body, develop 10,000 techniques in one furnace, and create one's own technique. The Tao gave birth to one gave birth to two gave birth to three, and three gave birth to all things. If the myriad of grand Taos and techniques in the world were traced back to their source, then they would definitely return to the very beginning, one. These days, after a long period of exploration, deduction, and meditation, Lin Sun finally decided to create a method that could accommodate all Tao and develop all methods. At this moment, his body was like a furnace of the heavens and the earth, and it intended to refine his laws and Taos within it. In the years to come, the more Taos and techniques it refined, the more powerful the cauldron would be. However, it was easier said than done. How could it be a simple matter to contain 10,000 Taos and develop 10,000 techniques into one? Since the ancient times until now, there had never been such an inconceivable Tao art. But now, Lin Sun wanted to create it into his own method, which was equivalent to the Taoist scripture written by himself. The reason for this wasn't that Lin Sun was ambitious, but that he had too many inheritances. Cultivating at the same time would inevitably cause his strength to be mixed, and he couldn't concentrate on one. Now, the method Lin Sun created was to integrate all the mysteries of these methods into one. It was just like the secret of three Taos fusing into one. The essence is the only one. However, this was simply too difficult. For example, the profound sword scripture, void-shattering divination finger, no return, 9 clarity holy physique technique, and so on and so forth. Which one of them wasn't a top supreme inheritance in the world? Even Lin Sun hadn't completely grasped the mystery of it, and it was not easy to integrate these inheritances. But if he couldn't create an unprecedented method, couldn't cultivate a Tao that no one had ever pursued since ancient times, how could he stand out from the tens of thousands of geniuses? How could he suppress all his peers and claim to be invincible in this realm? If you want to establish the strongest land, you must seek the supreme technique. Boom. In his body, the spirit, qi, and spirit were burning fiercely like charcoal. All the great Tao had evolved into a furnace, and it was smelting all the techniques in his body. However, every technique was extremely obscure, and there would be terrible conflict from time to time during the smelting process. A little carelessness would cause the furnace to be destroyed and the Tao to disappear, and the cultivator would suffer a backlash. Fortunately, this furnace was based on Lin Sun's talent, star engulfing sky. It itself had the magical power of swallowing everything and containing everything, so it could resolve many dangerous conflicts and backfire during smelting. Otherwise, the conflict between Tao and Tao was enough to cause any cultivator to suffer from qi deviation and die suddenly. It was no exaggeration to say that if Lin Sun didn't have star engulfing sky, it would be no different from courting death if he dared to do this. At this time, his mind was calm, his consciousness was clear, and he was completely immersed in creating his own method, completely forgetting himself. Time flew by, and half a month had passed in a hurry. During this period, Lin Sun sat cross-legged at a place of 30,000 meters outside the city, motionless like a clay sculpture. The cultivators in the city of Tao protectors were shocked and horrified at the beginning, but they gradually got used to such a scene. During this process, Zhao, Jingxian, Silver, and Little Tian didn't go out. They had been guarding Lin Sun for fear that any movement would disturb him. Even Xiao Hao, Ruawu, and the big blackbird couldn't see anything, nor could they judge what kind of hardships and dangers Lin Sun had experienced to create his own method. 1 month later, Lin Sun was still motionless, and even the aura around him had completely disappeared. He was like a dead thing without life fluctuations. Only an invisible Tao lingered around him, proving that he was still in the strange state of creating his own method. The camp of the ancient desolation was completely used to this scene. Everyone was busy. Some were patrolling the battlefield of the 9 regions, and some were hunting the remaining forces of the 8 regions. Some were searching for secret realms that contained the opportunity to become a saint. 2 months later, Zhao Jingxian couldn't calm down after all. She said worriedly, "It's been so long. Why hasn't he done anything?" Little Silver and Little Tian looked at each other with furrowed brows. At this time, Lin Sun indeed didn't have any aura or movement. Even the invisible Tao lingering around him had become obscure like stagnant water. Why didn't anyone worry about him? The big black bird walked over from a distance, looked at Lin Sun's state, and said, "Wait and see. If you want to create a supreme method, you must go through the most difficult path. The longer it takes for this boy to create the method, the greater the harvest will be when he succeeds. Neither withered nor silent, neither dead nor alive, but muddled into chaos." It seemed to see something, and its eyes were full of surprise. 3 months later, he hasn't woken up yet. Even Xiao Hao, Ruo Wu, laughing at the heavens, and yet Chun couldn't help worrying. However, no one could see Lin Sun's state at the moment, and they were doomed to be of no help. There is less than half a year left before the end of the 9-region battlefield. If Big Brother continues to be like this, it will be a little troublesome. The old toad sighed. "Wait and see. There's still time," Alu said in a low voice. During this period of time, the entire 9-region battlefield was calm, and nothing major happened. The remaining forces of the 8 regions were being eliminated bit by bit under the efforts of Xiao Hao and the others, and in the camp of the ancient desolation, there were also some top sages. It could be said that there were continuous happy events. However, no matter how hard they searched, they still couldn't find the 2 leaders, Xue Qingyi and Kuan Xiaoyu. This made many people feel a little regretful. Before they knew it, another 3 months had passed. Lin Sun was still silent like a clay statue, and even the invisible Tao rhyme lingering around him couldn't be found. Anyone who saw him would have the feeling that he was as empty as a void. Big Brother, he won't wake up again, will he? Alu couldn't calm down at all. Looking at Lin Sun's state at the moment, he looked like he had passed away in meditation. There was no aura, no vitality, his body was dry, and there was no breath at all. Bah! Jinx! The old toad slapped the back of Alu's head. How can a peerless figure like Big Brother pass away so silently? What's more, it's just creating his own cultivation method. It's not a problem for him. That being said, the old toad was also very nervous. Zhao, Jingxian, Tian, and Silver were all very silent. During this period of time, they had been guarding Lin's son. In terms of worry, they were more worried than anyone else. As time went by, the whole camp of the ancient desolation began to notice that Lin's son's cultivation seemed to be particularly long this time. For a time, there was a lot of discussion. The more outstanding a person is, the easier it is to encounter the wrath of heaven on the road of seeking Tao. It's not an exaggeration to say that heaven is jealous of heroic talents. Senior Lin single-handedly suppressed the 8 regions to the point where they couldn't even raise their heads. His intelligence and foundation can be said to be top-notch in the world. For someone like him, the dangers he encountered in cultivation are definitely beyond imagination. Alas, this is the pursuit of Tao. Although Senior Lin is peerless and brilliant, the dangers he encountered in seeking Tao are destined to be more terrible than ordinary people. Such discussions began to appear in the camp of the ancient desolation, and they became more and more intense. They couldn't help but worry and feel nervous for Lin's son. There's only 1 month left before the end of the 9-region battlefield. Why hasn't this guy woken up yet? Unless, on this day, the big black bird felt a little abnormal. But before it could finish its words, it suddenly stopped. Because at this time, Lin's son, who had been sitting on the ground like a clay statue for 7 months, quietly opened his eyes. He woke up. The big black bird was so excited that it almost jumped up. Zhao, Jingxian, Silver, and Tian, who had been guarding Lin's son, also noticed it at the first time, and they were all refreshed. When they all looked at Lin's son, they saw an invisible wave of power suddenly spread around Lin's son's body. Boom! At this moment, the sky suddenly trembled, like the first thunder in spring. The sound surged through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, resounding in all directions. In the city, countless practitioners were stiff all over. They almost felt a kind of terrifying and boundless pressure which spread like a tide. Many people's legs trembled, and they directly sat on the ground. Even the sages were shocked and almost coughed up blood. Top sages like Xiaohao, Ruowu, Old Toad, and Alu all gasped in unison as they felt a terrifying pressure on their souls. Swish! Almost at the same time, all eyes and divine awareness turned to the outside of the city, because that was where the terrible aura came from. After that, they noticed that the image of a furnace had suddenly appeared in midair. It towered into the clouds, and it was vast like the boundless universe. The surging Taoist light poured out from around the furnace, and hundreds of millions of rays of light fell down. The divine light was flowing, and the light was drifting. It was blazing and brilliant, showing a grand and sacred atmosphere. Chapter 1634. A furnace was suspended in the air like the sun in the sky. The sonorous voice of the Great Way stirred the world and knocked on everyone's heart. The world was filled with a sacred aura. The furnace was like the quintessence that ruled over the myriad of Taos, and its surface was branded with numerous scriptures of the Grand Tao. The scriptures flowed lightly and transformed into a fist technique that possessed the might to shake the heavens and the earth, transformed into countless sword chi that whistled and surged, transformed into true dragons that roamed through space, transformed into the furnace melted all Tao and Dharma in it. My God, what kind of Dharma is this? Countless exclamations of shock sounded at this moment. Top sages like Xiaohao, Ruowu, Old Toad, and Alu all felt a terrible oppressive power, which made their bodies tense and extremely depressed. However, no matter how hard they tried to perceive the mystery of the furnace, it was of no use. On the contrary, because they forced themselves to respond, their souls suffered a heavy, oppressive impact. At this time, Lin's son stood up from the ground, bathed in the magnificent rain of Tao light. His tall figure was like a spear piercing the sky, showing a majestic momentum as if he was overlooking the world and the mountains and rivers. Everyone had a feeling that Lin Sun had changed. He had a real dominating demeanor, as if he was standing on the top of the mountain of the Holy Realm. He was the highest peak, unshakable and insurmountable, which made people feel small at first sight. Of course, this was only what the crowd felt. It was an instinctive reaction after their souls were shaken. Boom! Suddenly, a dark, ink-like tribulation cloud emerged in the sky. It only covered an area of 10 acres, but it completely covered the sky above Lin Sun's head. Countless gorgeous bolts of tribulation, lightning flowed and surged within it, and they flickered with a glow that was filled with a terrifying aura that seemed capable of destroying the world. When the law is formed, the tribulation is born. Is this because the law created is too terrifying and has violated the forbidden power? Suddenly, the big black bird jumped and exclaimed. The hearts of the other experts went cold as well, and their hair stood on end while they were terrified. The tribulation lightning was gorgeous and resplendent, beautiful to the point of causing one's heart to tremble, and terrifying to the point of practically causing one to feel despair. Only Lin Sun looked calm, and his black eyes were clear, as if he had expected this scene. With a thought, the cauldron floating in the void, as large as the great void, suddenly rotated and shone brightly. It was like a great abyss was circulating, and it caused space to warp, shatter, collapse, and explode. An unparalleled suction force was also released from the cauldron and soared into the sky. Boom! The tribulation clouds churned, and a bolt of tribulation lightning fell from the sky like a world-destroying spear, rushing towards the cauldron. A deafening rumble resounded. The furnace was struck to the point of swaying, causing a rain of light to spray out while the light of the Tao surged, and it almost disintegrated. This caused everyone's hearts to tighten, and they all held their breaths. The power of the tribulation thunder was too terrifying, but fortunately, it was aimed at Lin Sun's law. If it targeted cultivators, then the consequences were simply unimaginable. After this strike, the furnace stabilized once more, and compared to before, it emanated a dense and condensed aura. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. He saw all these changes and couldn't help laughing. This disaster came at the right time. He could borrow the power of the lightning tribulation to further refine his cultivation technique. Boom! Gorgeous lightning bolts started to pour down madly like a storm, and every single bolt of lightning carried a dangerous aura that seemed capable of destroying the world. When they descended together, the terrifying scene caused all the experts in the city of Tao protectors to have the feeling of collapsing and losing control. Bang! 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 The furnace that was bombarded by the lightning tribulation seemed as if it was struck by a myriad of hammers in an instant. A rain of light sprayed out while the light of the Tao swept out, and then it disintegrated in an instant. Just when everyone thought that Lin Sun's creation technique had failed, they saw that it wasn't long before the disintegrated furnace condensed once more. On the other hand, Lin Sun exerted all his strength beneath the heavenly tribulation. The furnace was his law. Being bombarded by the lightning tribulation was like an extremely ferocious battle, and Lin Sun had no choice but to go all out. For a time, the lightning tribulation surged mightily and surged down. Dense arcs of lightning rumbled, and it easily shattered the furnace. But every time it was destroyed, the furnace condensed once more, and every time it condensed, its aura became more condensed, more vigorous, and even more ancient and boundless. These unbelievable scenes caused the hearts of Xiaohao and the others to surge, and they were dumbstruck. Creating a law of Tao Protector had triggered a lightning tribulation. This in itself seemed extremely inconceivable, and it was like an impossible legend. But now, the scene of Lin Sun's Law Protector fighting against the lightning tribulation was undoubtedly even more shocking. No one had expected that such an unimaginably terrifying thing existed in the world. Oh my God, it's amazing. The big black bird flapped its wings and shouted with indescribable excitement. A single Law Protector had triggered a heavenly tribulation, So how terrifying would the power of this law protector be? But besides the big blackbird, everyone else was extremely nervous because the lightning tribulation was still surging, and it seemed as if it wouldn't stop until Lin Sun's law protector was destroyed. Lin Sun's situation had become extremely difficult. His face gradually turned pale, and it was obvious that the process of law protector was becoming strenuous. You must hold on." Zhao Jingxian quietly clenched her lily-white hands, and her clear eyes were filled with worry. "Master will definitely overcome the lightning tribulation." Little Silver was cheering Lin Sun on. The others were also looking forward to it, watching nervously. Boom! As time went by, the power of the lightning tribulation became more and more terrifying, and it could even be described as crazy. The supreme and unparalleled aura of destruction made the scalp of everyone in the whole city numb. It was extremely oppressive and horrifying. They were just watching. What kind of pressure did Lin Sun, who was standing under the lightning tribulation and confronting it head-on? No one could understand it. They could only see that Lin Sun's face was getting paler and paler, almost transparent, and his body staggered from time to time, as if he was about to collapse. Only his eyes were as firm as before. It's terrible, too terrible. Since ancient times, when creating a law protector, who has ever experienced such an incredible lightning tribulation? At this moment, the big black bird couldn't calm down and murmured, "If I didn't see it with my own eyes, how could I know that there is such a lightning tribulation in this world?" Yes, even the big blackbird had never heard of this kind of lightning tribulation for law protector, let alone seen it. As for the others, they were destined to know nothing about it. All of this seemed to be world-shocking and inconceivable. Boom! The lightning tribulation became more and more intense, as if God was angry. In the end, Lin Sun couldn't help coughing up blood, and he was in a sorry state. Even Zhao Jingxian couldn't bear to watch it, because it was too torturous. The others also changed their expressions. If they couldn't hold on, not only the law protector created by Lin Sun would be destroyed, but they themselves would also suffer unimaginable backfire. However, at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly let out a long roar, and his whole body merged with the stove. "Open!" A loud shout shook the heavens and the earth. The next moment, the stove and Lin Sun glowed together, and with a bang, a terrifying wave of power rushed out and swept across the sky. The lightning tribulation and lightning tribulation all over the sky were swept away. Rumble, the world shook, and all things were silent. Everyone's eyes were wide open, and they were shocked. One strike broke the lightning tribulation. High up in the sky, Lin Sun's tall figure stood, and a stove appeared around him. His matchless and invincible posture was deeply imprinted in everyone's mind, and they were destined to never forget it in this life. Because he was like a legend, a myth. No one knew how long it took for the turbulent world to calm down, and the horrible and oppressive lightning tribulation aura also faded like a tide. It's done. The deathly silent atmosphere was broken by an excited cheer. Soon after, the huge city was like an exploding pot, completely boiling over. Countless people shouted and cheered excitedly. "Great, Senior Lin. Ha ha! Today I can see such a rare event. Even if I leave the 9-region battlefield now, I will have no regrets." So domineering. Senior Lin is indeed the leader of the true sage realm in the ancient desolation realm. Even his lightning tribulation is so unique. At this time, Xiaohao, Ruowu, and Old Toad were also relieved. They looked at each other and couldn't help laughing, feeling happy for Lin Sun. Listening to the earth-shaking cheers, Zhao Jingshuan's tense heart gradually calmed down. She looked at Lin Sun's tall figure in the distant sky, and she couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth proudly. Her heart was full of joy and honor. "Little Tian, did you see that? Master never disappoints." Little Silver crossed his arms in front of his chest, looking proud. Little Tian fluttered his wings and nodded. He actually succeeded. If the ancient forces in the starry sky know about this, I'm afraid it will attract countless covetous eyes. Fortunately, we are in the 9-region battlefield, so we don't have to worry about similar dangers, the big black bird sighed with emotion. Even now, it couldn't calm down, because the movement caused by Lin Sun's Dharma creation was too unusual. In the sky, Lin Sun took a deep breath. His black eyes were clear, and the chi around him gradually converged. The furnace shadow around him also disappeared. He stood in the void with his hands clasped behind his back, his heart full of joy. After 7 months of solitary development, he had finally attracted the lightning tribulation today, melting all Tao, developing all Dharma, infinite power, can be named the Great Tao Furnace Scripture, Lin Sun murmured. At this moment, he had a wonderful feeling, as if he had opened a new door on the Great Tao cultivation. This door was his own Dharma. In the eyes of countless cultivators, this was establishing one's own Dharma and writing the Great Tao Scripture. It was the foundation for a saint to spread the Tao to the world and establish a foothold on the Great Tao. With this Scripture and Dharma, not to mention establishing a sect, it was even enough to establish an orthodoxy and have the resources to compete with other orthodoxies. After a long time, Lin Sun restrained his thoughts and looked at the city of Tao protectors in the distance. There were countless faces there, and countless gazes were looking at him. His figure floated down and walked over. Chapter 16:35. Seeing Lin Sun coming from afar, all the people standing in front of the city held their breath and felt a heavy pressure. They almost instinctively felt awe in their hearts. The tiger roared, and all beasts bowed down. The dragon soared to the sky, and all creatures looked up to him. At this time, Lin Sun gave people the feeling that he was an immortal floating down from the clouds. He was the ruler of the holiness. Even peerless sages like Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu felt an invisible pressure, and they couldn't help but look surprised. Lin Sun, who had created his own method, was completely different from before. His every move was majestic. The deity statues that were enshrined in temples by the living beings of the mortal world would imperceptibly possess a solemn and dignified aura after experiencing years of burning incense and pious worship. Lin Sun, on the other hand, had undergone a transformation on the road of Tao, so his aura naturally changed. It was invisible and intangible, but it went straight to people's hearts. Lin Sun keenly noticed that everyone's expression was different. The next moment, with a thought of his mind, his temperament changed silently. He was simple and ordinary, like a divine object concealing itself. Almost instantly, the invisible oppressive aura that everyone felt disappeared without a trace. Looking at Lin Sun, his clothes fluttered in the wind, and his figure was tall and graceful, giving people a comfortable feeling of clarity and warmth, like the spring breeze and rain. Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu were even more surprised when they saw this. He could move his chi at will, and he could be as majestic as a sage or as simple as a mortal. They could only look at him and sigh. How strong was Lin Sun now? How terrifying was the method he created? No one could tell. But everyone knew that Lin Sun, who had created his own method, was invincible in the peerless saint realm. He was truly invincible. Lin Sun's success made the ancient desolation realm fall into a jubilation. Countless cultivators came to visit him that day. It was not until late at night that the visiting guests gradually dispersed. In the courtyard, Lin Sun, Old Toad, Alu, and the big blackbird were drinking. The lights were dim, and the night was quiet. Big brother, the battle of the 9 regions is about to end. I'm sure that when we return, the cultivators in the ancient desolation domain will not believe that we won. Old Toad's drunken eyes blurred as it spoke. Countless wine jars were piled up on the ground nearby, scattered all over the place in a mess. Next to him, Alu chuckled and said, "I'm more curious about which force in the realm of ancient desolation will dare to mess with you after we return." Hearing this, everyone could not help but burst into laughter. The significance of this great victory in the Battle of the 9 Regions was absolutely beyond imagination. It wasn't just to wash away the humiliation and hatred of countless ancestors, nor was it as simple as defeating all 8 regions. Most importantly, this victory was enough to change the situation of the realm of ancient desolation. What was the general trend? It was to wash away the decadence and decline of the past, and dare to change the sun and moon to a new day. This was the reason why the ancient Desolation Realm had the confidence to raise its head again. In the past, the ancient Desolation Realm had been suppressed by the other 8 realms for many years, and the experts of the ancient Desolation Realm had to bow their heads countless times. But now it was different. Even though the ancient Desolation Realm was still far inferior to the other 8 realms in terms of overall strength, this great victory was enough to let all living beings in the ancient Desolation Realm see the hope of rising again and surpassing the other 8 realms. This was the impact of this great victory in the Battle of the 9 Regions. And everyone knew that if Lin Sun had not turned the tide, the ancient Desolation Realm would never have won the Battle of the 9 Regions. It was no exaggeration to say that without Lin Sun, the ancient Desolation Realm would have been destroyed many times. In short, no matter who participated in the Battle of the 9 Regions or not, as long as they were cultivators of the ancient Desolation Realm, they must be grateful to Lin Sun. Under such circumstances, when the Battle of the 9 Regions came to an end and they returned to the ancient Desolation Realm, if anyone dared to make life difficult for Lin Sun, that was simply courting death. There was no need for Lin Sun to do anything at all. Top sages such as Xiao Hao, Ruo Wu, Laughing at the Heavens, Yechen, and Mi Hongjin would be the first to stand up and help him. Humph, you just top sages. Don't underestimate the heroes of the ancient Desolation Realm. Those ancient forces have old monsters of the Great Sage and King Sage Realm. The big black bird snorted coldly, as if it was giving orders. And on the front line of the ancient Desolation Realm, who knows how many strongmen of the Quasi-Emperor Realm are fighting bloody battles. If you think you can do whatever you want just because you've won the Battle of the 9 Regions, you're very naive. Slap. The old toad slapped the back of the big black bird's head. He couldn't stand the bird's attitude of contempt for all living beings. The old toad scolded, "You damned bird, you're such a killjoy. You're asking for a beating." The big black bird was exasperated. "Damn it, I'm reminding you out of goodwill. How dare you hit me? Believe it or not, I'll kill you." The old toad was not afraid at all. He rolled up his sleeves and walked up. "Come on, let's fight. Let's go outside the city. This time, I'll teach you how to be humble." With a swoosh, the big black bird soared into the sky angrily. The old toad followed closely behind. Alu, who was eager to see the world in chaos, sprang to his feet and chased after the big black bird. "Should we go and persuade him?" Zhao Jingxian looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun shook his head with a smile. "No need. That bird is the most cunning and insidious. If he can't beat it, he'll run away immediately. As for the old toad, with Alu around, he certainly won't watch the big black bird bully him." He knew the nature and temper of these guys all too well. "Master, Tian and I also want to watch the battle." Next to him, Little Silver was eager to go. Go on, go on." Lin Sun waved his hand. Soon, only Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian were left in the courtyard. The night sky was deep and a cool breeze was blowing. Perhaps it was because of the wine, but Zhao Jingshuan's starry eyes were blurred, and her clear and beautiful face was stained with a touch of red, making her look bright and beautiful. Resting her head on Lin Sun's shoulder, she said softly, "We're about to return to the ancient Desolation Realm. Time really flies." It had been 3 years since the opening of the 9 Regions battlefield. Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion when he thought about everything he had experienced in the past 3 years. Cultivation was like a journey against the tide, and he was also a traveler. Even if he succeeded in his cultivation and could live as long as heaven and earth, he was destined to be unable to escape from the passage of time. Did Xie Ji say anything about me when she left? Suddenly, Zhao Jingxian asked with a rare hint of nervousness in her voice. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. "Guess." Zhao Jingxian raised her head and glared at Lin Sun reproachfully. "You're still in the mood to joke." She was slightly tipsy, her face flushed, and her starry eyes watery. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned at such a close distance. He didn't hide his love, appreciation, and amazement at all. Zhao Jingxian lowered her head shyly. In the past, she would definitely change the topic and avoid Lin Sun's gaze. But at this time, perhaps because of the wine, she didn't know where she got the strength to meet Lin Sun's frank and passionate eyes. Looking at the familiar handsome face, her heart couldn't help but sway. Jingxian, sorry to keep you waiting. Lin Sun's voice was low, with an indecipherable meaning. Looking at the delicate and bright face that was within reach, he couldn't help lowering his head and kissing her red and moist lips. It was a wonderful touch. Zhao Jingxian was shy, and her white face was hot. She closed her eyes, and an indescribable feeling emerged from the bottom of her heart. She was nervous, perturbed, but also had a kind of indescribable comfort, joy, and expectation. She seemed to have lost all the strength to resist. She was at his mercy. Zhao Jingshuan's mind was filled with emotions. Suddenly, she thought of a saying, "Life and death are bound together. Hold your hand and grow old together." In the next moment, she felt her body lighten as she was carried up by a pair of strong arms, and her nervous feelings struck her heart like tidewater, causing her fine and long eyelashes that were like small fans to tremble, causing her clear and beautiful face to become even more alluring, and it was incomparably charming. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. No matter what kind of temperament Jingxian was and how outstanding she was a woman after all. At this moment, she was inevitably shy and nervous. The next moment, he held the beautiful girl in his arms and walked into the room. "Jingxian, let me serve you to bed tonight." In a daze, Lin Sun's low voice rang in Zhao Jingshuan's ears. Driven by strong emotions, she couldn't help opening her eyes and staring at the face close to her. Finally, she just vaguely uttered a in her lips, which was as low as a mosquito's buzz. At this moment, her face was crimson and her body was limp. She only felt that she had lost all her strength. Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense anymore. He carried Zhao Jingxian to the bed, like holding a warm jade. The delicate fragrance from her plump and slender body made Lin Sun feel hot all over. He took off Zhao Jingshuan's clothes almost rudely, and then fell on the bed with her. Her black hair flowed like a waterfall beside the pillow. She was as beautiful as jade, and her body was as delicate as snow. The bed curtain was then pulled down. I wish I could be like the star and the moon, shining brightly every night. After a long time, Lin Sun didn't know how long it had been. He didn't enjoy himself to the fullest, but he was full of satisfaction and comfort. On the bed, Lin Sun held Zhao Jingxian, and a kind of joy, peace, and fullness flowed in their hearts. Neither of them spoke, as if they were afraid to break the quiet atmosphere. It wasn't until dawn that Lin Sun opened his mouth and said with emotion, "So, this is the feeling." Zhao Jingxian was stunned at first, and then her pretty face blushed. She glared at him with shyness and annoyance and said, "It's already dawn. You're still thinking about it. Don't you feel ashamed?" Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. He kissed her forehead gently and said, "I'm very greedy. It's not enough for me to think about it for a lifetime." Zhao Jingshuan's starry eyes were blurred, and her heart trembled. Her delicate body was soft. She was in a trance again. On this night, when the golden wind and jade dew met, it was better than countless things in the world. Chapter 1636. When the sky was bright, Lin Sun walked out of the room refreshed. Looking around, he felt that the sky was clear and the wind was gentle, which made him feel relaxed and happy. The scenery was still the same, but when one's state of mind was different, the scenery would naturally be different. There was less than a month left before the end of the 9 Regions battlefield. Lin Sun intended to take this opportunity to accompany Zhao Jingxian. Last night, Zhao Jingxian said, "I know you can't let go of her. I don't ask you to marry her, nor do I covet the status. As long as you don't betray me, that's enough." Because of this sentence, Lin Sun was moved and felt a little guilty. Zhao Jingxian, the daughter of the emperor of Xiao Empire, was one of the most beautiful women in the world. She had the blood of a real dragon flowing in her body. She was talented and beautiful like a fairy. If it was any other cultivator, Then being able to obtain the company of such a beauty was already an extraordinary fortune. But now, Zhao Jingxian made such a concession. How could Lin Sun not feel ashamed? Even Lin Sun himself couldn't help but sigh with emotion that the beauty cared for him so much. If he didn't accompany Zhao Jingxian well, Lin Sun would feel that he was a sinner. In the following period of time, Lin Sun left the city of Tao protectors with Zhao Jingxian and traveled all over the Nine Regions battlefield. Boating on the lake, watching the clouds on the top of the mountain, walking on the waves in the blue sea, lying drunk on fireflies, overlooking the waterfall, wasn't it nice to be free and unfettered? Occasionally, Lin Sun would pick Linglu divine grass, make tea with cloud, rootless water, and drink with Zhao Jingxian among the flowers. They were half destined to cultivate and half destined to be a monarch. The battle of the Nine Regions, the pursuit of enemies, and the pursuit of Tao were all forgotten by them. The joy here was not worth mentioning to outsiders. Time passed day and night. On this day, in a snow-white glacier, Lin Sun split a piece of ice to fetch water and boiled tea with a small red clay stove. Zhao Jingxian sat on one side with her arms around her knees, watching Lin Sun with a smile. Suddenly, a strange roar sounded in the sky, like the sound of the Great Way, spreading between the heaven and the earth. Almost at the same time, the ancient desolation token on Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian resonated and trembled. Coincidentally, the two of them stopped what they were doing and looked at each other. They both realized that it was time for the Nine Regions battlefield to come to an end. Looking at the tea that was about to boil on the small red clay stove, Lin Sun sighed softly. Time flies. No matter how happy he was, it was always short-lived. Are you unwilling to leave after tasting the marrow? Zhao Jingxuan's eyes were filled with tenderness. Lin Sun nodded. During this period of time, he had accompanied Zhao Jingxian on a leisurely tour. Naturally, he was reluctant to part with her. Let's go. There will be many more opportunities in the future. Zhao Jingxian took Lin Sun's hand and walked away. She was very satisfied with the company and fun these days. What's more, if a couple's feelings lasted for a long time, why would they stay together day and night? He couldn't help but be stunned when he returned to the city of Tao protectors, because a stone stele that was a few meters tall had suddenly been erected before the grand and lofty golden city walls. The stone stele was inscribed with row after row of words that were like iron strokes and silver hooks in the writing of the Grand Tao. In the third battle of the Nine Regions, the leader of the ancient desolation, Saint Lin Sun, wielded unparalleled strength and led the Nine Regions battlefield. In the beginning, Saint Lin Sun slaughtered an entire city by himself. He was invincible. After that, he rebuilt the city of Tao protectors, defeated the allied forces of the Seven Regions, and conquered the Black Cliff Sea. He traveled through the 8 regions alone and slaughtered thousands of heroes with a single sword strike. The deeds that Lin Sun had done in the past 3 years were listed in detail. In a trance, Lin Sun recalled the scenes of the battles in the past 3 years. How magnificent! Only such a figure can be called a leader. Only such a hero can be called a sage. A monarch's heart is like the heavens, and his achievements are unprecedented. His strength is unparalleled, and no one can rival him. I set this stele here, and I hope that Saint Lin Sun's name will go down in history. May the future generations be wise. When he finished reading the stele, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel agitated and unable to calm down. He didn't expect that the ancient desolation camp would set up such a stele for him. Look at that. Zhao Jingxian looked into the distance. Lin Sun looked up and saw countless figures gathered on the city wall, and everyone was looking at him with a smile on their faces. Brother Lin, this stele of merit is a token of our appreciation. Each character was carved by a different practitioner. Only in this way can we show our respect. Xiao Hao said loudly. The others also nodded. Lin Sun couldn't help touching his nose and said with a wry smile, "Can I refuse?" "No." Everyone said in unison, and then they couldn't help laughing, their voices shaking the sky. Today, the Nine Regions battlefield had come to an end. The practitioners in the city from different places of the ancient desolation would also leave today. However, they didn't know when they would be able to meet again, so they all gathered in front of the city at the same time, just to say goodbye to Lin Sun together. Thank you very much, everyone. Lin Sun took a deep breath and cupped his hands. His voice resounded through the world. Blood Demon territory. In a remote place with barren mountains and unruly rivers, the sound of Tao resounded in the sky. Xueqingyi, who was hiding in the depths of a smelly quagmire, was startled and woke up from his dormancy. It's finally over. Ignoring the foul smell of the quagmire, Xueqingyi rushed out excitedly. Listening to the sound of Tao, he felt like he was listening to the most beautiful melody in the world. He stretched out his hands to the sky, closed his eyes, and showed an intoxicated expression. After hiding for almost a year, he finally saw the light of day again. For Xueqingyi, it was like opening a new path. After a long time, Xueqingyi's scarlet eyes revealed a bone-chilling hatred. He gritted his teeth and said, "Shame and failure aren't terrible. What's terrible is knowing shame without courage. Lin Sun, I'll let you be proud this time. I'll definitely pay you back in the future." Whoosh! The next moment, he disappeared into thin air. The North Underworld. In the depths of a vast and boundless ocean, a deranged figure was squatting on a piece of reef, crying and wailing. His hair was messy like grass, his clothes were ragged, his eyes were sunken, and his body was thin. He looked even more miserable than a beggar. But if Lin Sun was here, he would definitely recognize that this person was the leader of the North Underworld region, the young master of the imperial family Kun Xiaoyu. Back then, he was so glorious and arrogant. He was like the sun in the sky, shining brightly and dominating the region. But now, he was in such a miserable state that he was neither human nor ghost. He was crazy and his mind was in chaos. When the sound of Tao resounded in the sky, Kun Xiaoyu, who was squatting on the ground and sobbing, froze as if he was struck by lightning. His expression began to change. His eyes that had lost their focus started to focus bit by bit. After a long time, he suddenly stood up and roared at the sky. "I've been muddle-headed for dozens of years. Today, I finally know who I am." Every word was like the roar of a dragon, surging above the 9 heavens. His voice was full of relief and open-mindedness. "Lin Sun, just you wait. When I rise to the top, I will definitely avenge my past humiliation." Kun Xiaoyu suddenly stepped into the air, and his figure suddenly turned into a koan that was tens of thousands of feet long. He crushed the void and swept away the wind and clouds. The ancient desolation world. In front of the city of Dao protectors, countless cultivators of the ancient desolation domain were also moving. They took out the ancient desolation token and teleported away, disappearing from the 9 regions battlefield. "Senior Lin, we will leave first. The mountains will not change, and the rivers will flow forever. Senior Lin, we look forward to meeting you again in the ancient desolation domain." Senior Lin, there were many people who came to bid farewell to Lin Sun. Some were familiar, some were unfamiliar, some could call out their names, and some couldn't. But every one of them had respect and blessings from the bottom of their hearts. Lin Sun responded to them one by one, feeling emotional. Those who were alive could return to their homeland. As for the experts of the ancient desolation realm who were buried in this place, they were destined to stay silent for eternity. That was the cruelty of life and death. Gradually, there were fewer and fewer cultivators in the city. Brother Lin, farewell. Mi Hongjin, Yi Mo, and the others came to bid farewell. Take care. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. Lin Sun, after returning to the ancient desolation domain, you must come to the Big Dipper world. I'll treat you to the 10,000-year-old wine of the Ziwei, sacred mountain. Yuchen said loudly. Laughing at the heavens, interrupted, "Don't. Come my breeze valley. I'll take out the 7 treasures drunk in immortal wine and drink it with you." His words made Yi Cheng glare angrily. "Do you dare not go against me for once?" Laughing at the heavens, didn't back down and sneered. "I just can't stand the sight of you. What's wrong with that?" Well, the two of them were born to be at odds with each other again. Lin Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he felt warm inside. These were friends, brothers who went through thick and thin together. Brother Lin, we're leaving too. Not long after, Xiao Hao and Ruo also came to bid farewell. Lin Sun talked with them and then watched them leave one by one. In the end, only Lin Sun, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu, the Big Blackbird, Little Silver, and Little Tian were left. This was normal. When they first came to the nine-region battlefield, the strong in the ancient desolation domain came from different places. When they went back, they would naturally go back the way they came. It was destined that they would not go the same way. For example, Lin Sun and the others came through the portal of the Immortal Mountain. When they went back, they would inevitably return to the Immortal Mountain. Brother, let's go. Old Toad, Alu, and the others looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun stood at the top of the city wall and looked around as if he wanted to engrave all this in his mind. After a while, he withdrew his gaze, took a deep breath, and said firmly, "Let's go." A ray of light flowed, and then Lin Sun and the others vanished one by one. Only the enormous city of Tao Protector stood silently in the boundless heavens and the earth, and it was suffused with an eternal and divine aura. On this day, after 3 years of fierce battles, the battle of the nine-region battlefield came to an end. No one knew which camp they belonged to, but as long as they survived, they would leave today. The vast nine-region battlefield fell into silence again. No one knew how many years it would be before it opened again. At that time, the bright moon shone on the colorful clouds. Chapter 16:37. Ancient Desolation, Magic Pavilion. In front of a quiet and ancient palace, Miao Xian put his hands behind his back and stared into the distance. He couldn't calm down. It had been 3 years since the opening of the Nine Regions battlefield. If nothing unexpected happened, the Battle of the Nine Regions would come to an end today. But this time, could the realm of ancient desolations camp change the situation of certain defeat and hold on until the end? Miao Xian couldn't see through it. In the first Battle of the Nine Regions, the ancient desolation suffered a crushing defeat. There were countless casualties, and only 1 in 1,000 could return alive. In the second Battle of the Nine Regions, the ancient desolation held on for less than half a year before being completely destroyed. In the end, only a few dozen people were lucky enough to survive. What will be the result this time? The more Miao Xian thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. This time, a group of real, peerless figures emerged, but compared with the other 8 regions, the gap was still too wide. After a long silence, Miao Xian suddenly remembered what Mr. Shun said when he left 3 years ago. In a Nine Regions battlefield, if there is a glimmer of hope to reverse the defeat of the ancient desolation, this glimmer of hope lies in Lin Sun. But could Lin Sun really do it? Miao Xian had no confidence at all. The Nine Regions battlefield was a cruel and terrifying place. It was simply impossible for a single person to turn the tides of the battle. Boom! At this moment, a grand sound suddenly sounded in the sky, and the power of the law of heaven and earth began to rumble in different areas of the ancient desolation. The Battle of the Nine Regions was over. Miao Xian suddenly raised his head, and his eyes burst with divine light, as if he could see through the mystery of the world. Almost at the same time, the ancient orthodoxies and ethnic forces in different areas of the ancient desolation all noticed the strange phenomenon in the sky at the first time. 3 years have passed. The Battle of the Nine Regions comes to an end today. This time, how will the Battle of the Ancient Desolation be? I hope you can come back alive. Don't let be bad news. We have lost for too long and been humiliated for too long. If we lose again, it will be difficult for us to raise our heads in the future. Countless bigwigs, old monsters, and founding elders of the ancient sects couldn't help but feel nervous at this moment. Rumble, in the vast ancient desolation realm, in the boundless territory, in different regions and cities, the majestic, vigorous, and boundless Tao sounds reverberated everywhere. Even ordinary cultivators were alarmed by this. All of them realized that the curtains to the competition between the 9 regions that had continued for 3 years had been drawn today. Can our ancient desolation realm win this time? Many people were nervous. The competition between the 9 regions was not only about the honor of the ancient desolation realm, but also whether the ancient desolation realm could survive for a long time. Who wouldn't pay attention? I'm not talking about winning, but at least don't lose too badly. Many people sighed inwardly. Everyone knew that after 2 crushing defeats in the Battle of the 9 Territories and countless years of decline, it would be extremely difficult for the ancient desolation realm to win in the Battle of the 9 Territories. The Tao sound was still rumbling in the sky, like the horn sound of the end of the battlefield, making all living beings in the ancient desolation realm feel tangled, nervous, and perturbed. He was only waiting for one result. In different areas of the ancient desolation realm, figures began to appear in front of the portals leading to the 9-region battlefield. Xianhuang Divine Mountain. It was located in the northern part of the Dongxing territory. At this moment, countless figures had gathered in front of the Xianhuang Divine Mountain, which was tens of thousands of feet tall and covered in golden divine light. Almost all of those figures were big shots from the various ancient orthodoxies, including the Origin sect, the Sun Moon Hall, the Tai Taoist sect, and so on. At this moment, all of their eyes were fixed on the peak of the Xianhuang Divine Mountain. There was a portal leading to the 9-region battlefield there. When the Tao sound rang in the sky, the portal also buzzed and slowly opened in the void. Then, one figure after another emerged from the teleportation portal. They're back. Great. As long as our disciples come back alive. For a moment, there was a burst of noise, and everyone was surprised and excited. Because in the past, when the Battle of the 9 Territories ended, it was almost rare for cultivators to return alive from the 9-region battlefield. But now, the 3rd Battle of the 9 Territories had just ended, and so many figures had emerged. It was naturally surprising. How's the situation? An old man from the Sun Moon Hall couldn't help but ask. His voice was like thunder. All of a sudden, the bustling atmosphere fell silent. Old ancestor, we won. At this moment, Mi Hongxin's figure walked out of the portal. When he heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. We won. The entire place was silent again. Countless old monsters almost couldn't believe their ears. Hongxin, you mean our ancient desolation camp won? The old man couldn't help but ask again. Mi Hongxin took a deep breath and said, That's right. Our ancient desolation camp won. A year ago, we swept through the 8 regions and defeated all our enemies. Every word was like the sound of the Grand Tao, resounding through the heavens and smashing into the hearts of every big shot. They widened their eyes and looked at each other. It was as if they'd heard an impossible miracle, and they couldn't recover for a while. Swept through the 8 regions? Defeated all enemies? This was simply too unbelievable. Hongxin, I'll ask you again. Is this true? The old man was in a trance, and he still couldn't believe it. The experts who had just returned from the 9 regions battlefield, like Mi Hongxin, couldn't help but laugh. Not only those big shots, but even they themselves felt like they were dreaming when they recalled everything they'd experienced in the 9 regions battlefield. Mi Hongxin said with a firm expression, Old ancestor, there's no need to doubt it. We really won. In this battle of the 9 regions, our ancient desolation realm suppressed the other 8 regions and won a great victory. We really won. An old monster couldn't control his emotions. He cried out in excitement, and his eyes turned red. Quick, hurry up and tell me. I want to know how you all defeated those bastards from the 8 regions. This is something that has never happened before in history. One big shot was ecstatic. We won. Ha ha ha. Our ancient desolation realm finally won a great victory. Someone laughed wildly, and tears streamed down his face. It wasn't easy. Since ancient times, in the Battle of the 9 regions, the ancient desolation realm had suffered a lot of humiliation and blood, and the accumulated anger and hatred were higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. Now, they finally got their revenge. For a moment, the entire mysterious brilliance divine mountain was filled with excitement and cheers, resounding through the sky. Such things also happened in different areas of the ancient desolation realm in front of different portals. When laughing at the heavens, Yet Chun, Ruo Wu, Xiao Qinghe, Yu Jiaming, Yimo, Ji Xingyao, and other experts returned to the ancient desolation realm. They also brought the good news and victory in the Battle of the Nine Regions. For a moment, the whole ancient desolation realm was in an uproar. When the news of this great victory spread like a hurricane, the details of this great victory were also spread. What? Lin Sun defeated all the enemies in the 8 regions alone? The ancient orthodoxies in the ancient desolation realm were the first to get the news. When they learned of Lin Sun's feats in the 9 regions battlefield, they were all shocked and lost their composure. How is this possible? How'd he do it? Just one person, and yet he turned the tide and reversed the situation? Many exclamations sounded, and many big shots couldn't sit still and trembled. 3 years ago, before entering the 9 regions battlefield, the ancient desolation realm gave birth to 2 peerless sages, namely Xiaohao and Ruo Wu. A man and a woman, like the sun and the moon in the sky, became the most eye-catching existence in the ancient desolation realm. At that time, Lin Sun had not yet become a sage, and he was still a peerless king in the 9 retribution of longevity realm. Although he was famous all over the world for many ancient forces, he was still not a great existence. As the saying went, everyone under the sage was a nonentity. But after 3 years, everything about Lin Sun was completely different. He was not only a sage, but also an invincible cultivator in this realm. He was invincible in the 9 regions battlefield alone. This was undoubtedly incredible. Who could have thought of this? Who could have thought of this? Many big shots sighed with mixed feelings. Lin Sun, without any sect, was alone. When he rose from the ancient desolation realm, he had offended many great forces and set off many storms. Some people hated him, and some respected and admired him. But no matter what, he had never joined any orthodoxy since he rose. He had always been fighting alone. What was the big deal about one person? For those ancient orthodoxies and tribes, it was difficult for a person to achieve great things without a backer and force. But it was such a person who dominated the 9 regions battlefield, suppressed the camps of the 8 regions, and was regarded as the first person in the 9 regions battlefield. It was such a person who rebuilt the ancient desolation realm city of Dao Protector, protected all the strong cultivators of the ancient desolation realm, and finally turned the situation around and avenged the countless ancestors of the ancient desolation realm. It was also such a person who was a peerless sage, like a supreme sage, who won a great victory for the ancient desolation realm in the 9 regions battle. From now on, who dared to underestimate such a person? This favor is greater than the sky. No matter who, no matter which force, we have to accept it, because without Lin Sun, there would be no ancient desolation realm today. Some old antiques were extremely excited and said in a sonorous voice. This view became the common understanding of many sects and forces. Yes, this time the ancient desolation realm won a great victory in the 9 regions battle because of Lin Sun's contribution. Such a supreme merit was enough to benefit all living beings, leave his name in history, and be remembered by future generations. Chapter 1638. In the future, we have to change our attitude towards Lin Sun. Many ancient orthodoxies also realized that the current Lin Sun was completely different from the past. He was already an overlord of the pinnacle saint realm. Even the 9 regions had to admit that he was the number 1 person in the 9 region battlefield. In the entire ancient wasteland, there was only 1 person in history. 1 person can rule an orthodoxy. Some old antiques in the Saint King realm side. Perhaps the current Lin Sun was only a true saint in the saint realm, but his future achievements were destined to surpass any saint realm existence in the world. Just the word pinnacle was enough to make the true saints of the ancient wasteland bow their heads. In the past, when this kid was regarded as a legend, I scoffed at him. But now, I have to admit it, times have changed. The future ancient wasteland is destined to be the world of the pinnacle younger generation, and Lin Sun is undoubtedly a leading figure. Similar conversations continued to ferment. As time passed, the entire ancient wasteland knew of Lin Sun's feats in the nine-region battlefield. For a time, the world was shocked, and the world discussed the name Lin Sun, Divine Mystery Pavilion. Mr. Miao Xian laughed loudly. His laughter resounded through the sky, and he was indescribably happy. His tense heartstrings finally relaxed completely at this moment, and he had an unprecedented feeling of relaxation, excitement, and joy. Lin Sun, the number one person in the nine-region battlefield. Senior brother, you're right. The hope of changing the nine-region battlefield is only on this kid. Now all of this has come true. Mr. Miao Xian had always given people a refined, gentle, and mellow demeanor, but now he was unrestrained and laughed loudly. In the end, he even picked up a wine pot and drank wildly, shouting, "Servant, bring me a brush." Soon, a servant came forward respectfully and presented the spring and autumn brush and the book of history. Mr. Miao Xian sat on the ground and picked up the brush. After 3 years, the nine-region battle has come to an end. Lin Sun, this kid, single-handedly ruled the universe and suppressed the 8 regions. Line after line of words were like the brands of the Grand Tao, and they appeared on the thick and boundless book of history. This victory is the first of its kind in the history of the ancient wasteland domain and the blood-hatred accumulated in the past and present. With this achievement alone, Lin Sun's name will be immortalized in the history of the ancient wasteland. Line by line, sentence by sentence, they were all written by Mr. Miao Xian in one go in the history book. In the end, Miao Xian used almost all his strength to end the speech with the words, "Lin Sun has made great contributions for 1,000 years." He finished writing. Mr. Miao Xian threw his head back and drank, laughing heartily. While the entire ancient desolation region was in an uproar on the undying God Mountain, Lin Sun, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu, and the Big Black Bird were exchanging for Providence. 3 years ago, they had entered the nine regions battlefield from this place. According to the spirit servant of the undying God Mountain, the ancient desolate token worn by every expert had the ability to accumulate achievement points. The more enemies one killed, the more achievement points one could accumulate. As for achievement points, they could be exchanged for providence bestowed by the heavens. The undying God Mountain was one of the blessed lands that had gathered the providence of the great Tao since ancient times. It was covered with the true providence of the great Tao. When Lin Sun participated in the Little Tycoon ranking, he had experienced the wondrous use of the providence of the great Tao. It had immeasurable benefits for cultivation. Such an opportunity could not be wasted. I didn't expect you to do something that the ancients had never done before, and let the ancient wasteland domain obtain a great victory in the nine regions battle. The spirit's servant sighed. He was formed by the laws of the undying God Mountain, so he did not have any emotional fluctuations. However, he was very clear that this great victory was an earth-shattering event. After sighing with emotion, the spirit's servant was very happy. He pointed to the peak of the undying God Mountain and said, "There's a Tao platform there. Sitting on it, you can exchange for the corresponding providence of the great Tao in your ancient desolate token. Who'll go first?" Before he finished speaking, the big black bird rushed up with a whoosh and shouted, "Grandpa Bird will go first." Shameless. Old Toad and Alu both glared at him. The big black bird did not care at all and squatted on the Tao platform. In an instant, a formless aura of the great Tao spread out from the undying God Mountain. One could clearly see with the naked eye that thousands of magnificent rays of auspicious light drifted out from the Tao platform, completely covering the big black bird. This is the providence of the great Tao. Lin Sun could not help but be moved. Providence had always been mysterious, indistinct, and unfathomable. But now, the power of the great Tao had turned into rays of auspicious light, ethereal and illusory, like the light of ascension. When he carefully sensed it, he found that he could not sense anything. It seemed very mysterious. Everyone has providence. The more talented one is, the stronger their providence, and the greater their gains on the path of cultivation. As for those with poor providence, even if the opportunity is in front of them, they will not be able to grasp it. Even if they grasp it, they will not have the fortune to enjoy it. The Spirit's servant spoke and guided him. Some cultivators are people with inferior natural endowments. If they encounter an extraordinarily great fortuitous encounter, then it would be a calamity for them instead. The heavens are so unfair. Old Toad sighed. When has the heavens ever been fair? Alu said, when we cultivate the Tao, whether it's for longevity or for the power to transcend the mortal world, we've always been fighting against the heavens. We're just unwilling to accept our fate. Everyone knows that fate and luck have always been closely related. Lin Sun nodded secretly. What Old Toad and Alu said was true. Since ancient times, those who could achieve great success on the path of cultivation all had a kind of boldness and breadth of mind that fate does not depend on the heavens, but man can conquer the heavens. It was not an exaggeration to say that from a mortal to a saint, from a saint to an emperor, every step of cultivation was also an act of defying the heavens and changing one's fate again and again. However, some people were born with providence and were born with extraordinary talents and extraordinary aptitude, while others were born with poor aptitude like rotten wood. This was the difference between fate and providence. The so-called all creatures in the world are born equal had always been an illusion. Those born saints, divine sons, fairies, and princes, could they be equal to the children of Feiyun village? The moment they were born, their fates were already completely different. Not long after, the big black bird walked down from the platform and swayed as if it was drunk. It was intoxicated and dizzy as it clicked its tongue and said, "This is fate. It gathers the mysteries of the world from the past to the present. It's indescribably profound. Thief bird, do you feel any change?" Alu couldn't help but ask. The big black bird was stunned, and his eyes regained clarity. He said, "I can't say, but I can feel that I seem to be closer to the great Tao of heaven and earth. There's a kind of comfortable feeling like a fish in water. Let me try." Old Toad couldn't help but rush over in a hurry. Soon, wisps of providence formed by the providence of the great Tao emerged and shrouded Old Toad's figure. Taking advantage of this time, Zhao Jingxian asked, "Brother Sun, what are your plans after leaving the immortal God Mountain?" The big black bird at the side immediately pricked up his ears. Now that the 9-region battlefield had come to an end, Lin Sun had also become a top saint who had created his own method. In an entire ancient wasteland region, even the existence of the great saint realm could no longer threaten Lin Sun, unless the Saint King made a move. However, terrifying existences like the Saint King had either gone to the frontline battlefield of the ancient wasteland region or were in seclusion. Unless they encountered a life and death situation that involved the destruction of their sect, it was impossible for them to appear in the world. At such a time, what would Lin Sun do? Would he go to the black infernal heavenly dog clan, the heavens pivot sacred ground, the earth hidden temple, the sea spirit clan, and the golden crow clan for revenge? The big blackbird also wanted to know. One must know that when Lin Sun was in the ancient wasteland region, he had been suppressed by these great forces countless times, and had long formed an irreconcilable blood feud. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "I plan to go to the Divine Secrets Pavilion." Divine Secrets Pavilion? Zhao Jingxian, the big blackbird, and Alu were all stunned. Yes. Lin Sun nodded. Back at the murderous blood battlefield, he had promised the golden cicada youth something that involved the situation of the frontline battlefield. Now it was time to do this. "I thought that you would not be able to resist killing your way to the earth-hidden temple to take revenge, so you're only going to the Divine Secrets Pavilion. Then I am relieved." The big black bird spoke as if relieved of a burden. Lin Sun asked back, "If I really want to do this, are you going to stop me?" The big black bird said without hesitation, "I must stop you. That damn place is very dangerous. If you go there with your current strength, you may be caught. Even if those bald donkeys are merciful, They will definitely suppress you forever. Lin Sun raises eyebrows. How dangerous is it? The big black bird hesitated and finally sighed softly. You should know very well how powerful holy monk Du Ji is, but in the end, didn't he also suffer? Lin Sun was surprised. Didn't holy monk Du Ji suffer because he wanted to embark on a supreme road and violated the taboo, tribulation? This is just one of the reasons. The big black bird seemed to be unwilling to say more and said vaguely, in a word, don't underestimate the Earth-hidden temple. It's true that you are invincible in the true sage realm, but if the Earth-hidden temple really uses its trump card, it can suppress you like a fly. In the end, it reminded Lin Sun, I'm not deliberately discouraging you. I just want to tell you that the Earth-hidden temple is different from other holy places. Those bald donkeys have someone in it. The big black bird stretched out its claws and pointed to the sky. The ancient path of stars. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. The big black bird tacitly agreed and let out a long sigh. Actually, for example, Kuan Xiaoyu, Xue Qingyi, Jian Qingchun, and the other fellows you saw on the Nine Regions battlefield, the forces behind them are quite related to some of the forces on the ancient path of stars. Of course, there is such a situation in the ancient wilderness, and the Earth-hidden temple is just one of them. Besides, as far as I know, the Divine Secrets Pavilion should also be related to a certain orthodoxy on the ancient path of stars. This was the first time that the big black bird had revealed so many secrets.